Tonight, you travel to wartime Britain, from an orphanage to Hogwarts. In December 1926, Tom Marvolo Riddle was born in London to a dying witch and a muggle father who would never meet him. 17 years later, beneath the candlelit corridors of Hogwarts, the orphan had become a brilliant student searching for the hidden history of Salazar Slytherin. On 31 December 1926, in or near London, Merope Gaunt gives birth to a boy in a quiet room. The child arrives at the very end of the year, while frost gathers along the window panes and the last daylight fades from the roofs. His mother has little strength left. She is descended from Salazar Slytherin, though no one in the room speaks of ancient blood, serpents, or magic. Her name is Merope Gaunt, and her family has fallen into poverty, bitterness, and isolation. The child's father is Tom Riddle SR, a wealthy muggle from Little Hangleton, whose name the infant will carry without understanding its meaning. Before the birth, Tom Riddle SR abandons Merope. Shortly afterwards, Merope dies. The boy is taken away, and London receives him without ceremony. Cold light rests upon the tall windows of the orphanage, turning the glass a pale, watery grey. Beyond the panes, chimneys breathe coal smoke into the winter air, while rain darkens the narrow streets below. Inside, the dining room smells of boiled cabbage, damp wool, and the faint mineral odor of old stone. Chairs scrape gently across the floor as children move into their places. A spoon touches a bowl. Someone coughs near the stove. Along the walls, the paint has been rubbed smooth where shoulders have passed for many years. The worn stair rails shine from the touch of countless small hands, each generation polishing the wood without intending to leave a mark. Somewhere above, a pipe knocks once, then settles. The building holds its warmth unevenly. Near the kitchen, the air is heavy and close. By the windows, the cold remains. The infant is brought to a London orphanage and given the name Tom Marvolo Riddle. The matron, Mrs. Cole, records the details as carefully as she can, placing the child among the other foundlings and abandoned babies under her supervision. No letter arrives from Merope Gaunt. No relative appears from the Gaunt family. No gentleman from Little Hangleton comes to claim the son of Tom Riddle SR. The boy has no memory of his mother, no knowledge of his father, and no reason to imagine that another world exists beyond the city streets. His first days pass beneath ordinary roofs, among nurses, iron bedsteads, folded blankets, and the measured routines of an institution. He is fed, washed, wrapped, and carried. His future begins in the hands of strangers, who know only that he was born in 1926 and that his mother died soon afterwards. Rain taps against the orphanage glass with a patient, irregular sound. Drops gather in wavering lines, join together, and descend through the reflection of the room. The windows are tall enough to make the children seem small beneath them, their heads barely reaching the lower panes. Winter light enters without warmth. It lies across the scrubbed floor, catches on the rims of tin cups, and fades beneath the tables. In the dining room, the coal fire gives off a dry heat, smelling faintly of ash. Boiled cabbage softens in a large pot. Bread rests beneath a cloth. A draught moves along the skirting board, lifting a loose thread in the curtain's hem. You stand among these quiet details, hearing the rain, feeling the rough weave of your sleeve, and watching the grey afternoon settle over London. Tom grows within this narrow world, first as a silent infant, then as a composed and watchful child. The other children learn one another through quarrels, games, whispered alliances, and sudden reconciliations. Tom remains apart. He is not timid in the ordinary sense, for he neither shrinks from attention nor seeks protection from older children. Instead, he keeps himself carefully contained, observing faces and voices with a stillness that makes him difficult to read. He rarely offers an explanation. He does not speak of parents he cannot remember, nor does he invent stories about a home that never existed. Mrs. Cole notices that he seems older than the other children, though he is not taller, stronger, or better fed. His dark hair is kept neat. His clothes are plain but carefully arranged. Even as a boy, Tom Marvolo Riddle presents a polished appearance that sits uneasily beside the fear surrounding him. At dawn, the orphanage wakes by degrees. Floorboards creak beneath cautious feet, and the first movement comes from the rooms where the youngest children sleep. Blankets are folded. Faces are washed in cold water. Buttons are fastened with stiff fingers. Downstairs, the kitchen begins its work before the sky has brightened. Coal is carried in. A kettle trembles upon the range. The scent of cabbage returns, mixed with soap, wet stockings, and the sharper smell of the courtyard after rain. From the upper landing, the worn stair rails descend into shadow, smooth beneath your palm where many hands have traveled before yours. Tom moves through these routines without hurry. He occupies little space. He makes no noise unless he wishes to be heard. The building seems to make room for his silence. As Tom grows older, small disturbances begin to gather around him. Toys disappear from shelves and appear in places no child can reach. A cupboard door opens after being firmly closed. A stone thrown at Tom changes direction before striking him, landing beside another boy's shoe. Mrs. Cole hears these stories separately, each softened by embarrassment or dismissed as childish invention. Yet the pattern persists. Objects move when Tom is angry. Locks turn when he is refused. A boy who mocks his name finds his possessions scattered beneath his bed, though no one admits entering the room. Tom never boasts about such events. He watches the consequences with a calm expression, as if studying a machine whose workings have not yet been explained. The winter sun reaches the orphanage only briefly, pale as old bone behind a veil of cloud. Light passes through the tall windows and rests on dust suspended above the dining tables. The dust turns slowly, rising and falling in faint currents created by opening doors. Rainwater marks the hems of coats near the entrance. A damp scarf hangs beside the stove, releasing a cool, woolen smell as it dries. Coal smoke has entered the curtains, the stairwell, and the wooden cupboards where blankets are stored. Every surface bears evidence of use. The rails are polished. The steps are hollowed slightly at their centers. The banister feels warm where hands have lingered, and cold where no one has touched it for hours. Tom's presence leaves fewer visible traces. His place at the table is clean. His clothing is straight. His eyes remain fixed and unreadable. Mrs. Cole remembers Tom as a quiet, self-contained boy who did not behave like the others. She remembers children coming to her with frightened stories, then stopping at the sight of Tom standing in the corridor. She recalls a boy who woke screaming because spiders had filled his cupboard, though the door had been locked from outside. She recalls another child who returned from the yard with bruises shaped like narrow fingers around his arm. Tom said nothing about either incident. When asked where he had been, he gave answers so precise that they seemed prepared before the questions were spoken. Mrs. Cole did not know what to make of him. She sensed no ordinary mischief in his silences. There was calculation in them, together with patience and a private satisfaction that frightened her more than any broken window. The rain grows heavier during the afternoons, striking the glass in quicksilver beads. The orphanage windows tremble faintly whenever a cart passes through the street. Beyond them, London is reduced to blurred shapes, black railings, shining pavement, and the dim red glow of lamps waking before evening. In the dining room, the children bend over their bowls while steam rises into the colder air near the walls. Cabbage leaves float in thin broth. Coal settles with a soft collapse inside the grate. A chair leg drags, pauses, and drags again. Tom sits near the edge of the group, where he can see the doorway and the hands of anyone approaching. The rough tabletop holds scratches from knives and ink stains from lessons. His fingers rest beside them, clean and still. Tom also speaks to Sneggs. He does not understand this as a magical talent, because he has no language for magic and no teacher to name what he can do. In the overgrown corners of the orphanage grounds, he hears movements beneath bricks and behind boards. The sounds become words when he listens closely. A slow rustle near the wall carries meaning. A pale head lifting from wet grass seems to answer him. Tom addresses the creatures in a soft voice, and they respond with hissing phrases that other children hear only as noise. He does not regard the snakes as companions in any gentle sense. He is interested in them because they obey their own hidden rules, and because they do not demand the open expressions of friendship that make human children careless. The courtyard lies dark beneath a winter sky, its stones shining after rain. Water gathers in shallow hollows and reflects the upper windows, where small squares of yellow light tremble behind the glass. A drain gurgles near the wall. The iron gate carries dull rust beneath its paint. Damp leaves cling to the edges of the paving, and the air smells of soot, mud, and cold metal. Beyond the wall, London continues in muffled layers. Wheels pass. Footsteps hurry. A distant bell marks the hour. Near the garden shed, grass has been pressed flat by many shoes. Something small moves beneath the boards, pausing whenever the wind rises. Tom stands nearby with his hands in his pockets. Rain beads on his dark hair. He listens without looking surprised. Mrs. Cole cannot explain why the children fear Tom, because he seldom raises his voice and rarely begins a quarrel. His influence comes through smaller acts. He can make objects move without touching them. He can cause a toy to slide across the floor while everyone is watching, then appear as puzzled as the rest. He can make a boy's shoes vanish before a punishment, or send a cupboard latch snapping shut when someone tries to search inside. Sometimes he uses these abilities against children who have angered him. He does not yet call them abilities. He thinks of them as things he can make happen. When Amy Benson and Dennis Bishop complain about him, their words are dismissed as jealousy. When they stop speaking altogether, Mrs. Cole begins to listen. The upstairs corridor is quieter after the evening meal. Rain continues against the glass, but walls and curtains soften the sound. The corridor smells of wet coats, old varnish, and the lavender soap used on younger children. A single lamp gives the floor a dull amber sheen. Shadows stretch beneath the doors. From one room comes the murmur of a nurse settling a restless child. From another, the creak of a bed frame. The rail along the stairwell has been polished by generations of palms until the wood feels almost silky. Yet small splinters remain beneath the thumb. Warmth fades as you climb. At the landing, the window is cold enough to draw heat from your fingertips. Outside, rain threads the darkness. By the time Tom reaches 11, the other children have developed careful ways of avoiding him. They do not enter his room without reason. They do not touch objects he has claimed. They avoid mocking his clothes, his name, or the manner in which he watches them. He is handsome in a narrow, precise way, with a pale face, dark eyes, and hair that remains orderly even after play. His appearance suggests discipline, though no adult has taught him much about self-command. He has learned it alone. Tom Marvolo Riddle does not need to shout for a room to quiet around him. He looks at the children, and they remember what happened the last time they made him angry. The fear is not constant. It lies beneath ordinary life, like a cold current beneath shallow water. During one summer, Mrs. Cole arranges an excursion to the seaside. The children travel by train beneath a sky that changes from rain to weak sunlight and back again. Amy Benson and Dennis Bishop are permitted to go with Tom, though neither wants his company. They are old enough to manage the journey and young enough to believe that the open coast may loosen the rules of the orphanage. Salt begins to enter the air before the sea can be seen. Train windows cloud with breath and dust. Tom sits quietly, studying the changing landscape beyond the glass. He does not seem excited by the holiday. He watches the others laughing in the carriage, then turns his attention to the dark reflection of his own face. The seaside is pale beneath a washed-out sky. Salt wind moves over the stones and catches at the children's coats, carrying the sharp scent of weed, wet rope, and distant smoke. The beach is scattered with shells, driftwood, and flat pieces of chalk worn smooth by the tide. Gulls call above the harbour, their voices thinning as they cross the open air. Water withdraws from the shore with a long whisper, leaving shining lines between the stones. The wind presses cold against your cheeks and finds every gap in your clothing. Farther along the coast, a dark opening breaks the pale rock. The cave waits above the tide line, sheltered from the road and hidden from the adults. Tom notices it before Amy and Dennis do. Tom leads Amy Benson and Dennis Bishop towards the seaside cave, saying little as the path narrows between stones. The two children follow because they are uncertain how to refuse him and because Tom has promised them something worth seeing. He does not explain what lies ahead. The cave mouth is low and shadowed, with damp rocks shining around its edges. Inside, the air becomes colder and carries the faint mineral smell of underground water. Tom seems at ease there. He examines the walls, loose stones, and passages leading deeper into darkness. Amy asks when they will return. Dennis asks whether Mrs. Cole knows where they have gone. Tom answers neither question. He chooses a stone from the ground and sends it skimming across the cave without touching it. The cave holds the sea's breath in its darkness. Water drips from the ceiling at long, irregular intervals, each drop striking a hollow in the stone with a delicate note. Wind reaches the entrance only as a thin thread of air, cooling the damp walls. Salt has dried in white marks along the lower rock. Pale stones lie beneath a skin of sand, and small fragments of shell glimmer where the light enters. Outside, the waves move steadily against the shore, their sound softened by the narrow passage. The children's footsteps seem too loud. Their breathing gathers close around them. A faint green stain marks one wall where water has traveled down for years. At the cave's edge, daylight remains visible, silver and distant. Tom shows Amy and Dennis the hidden places where creatures have made their homes. He speaks to a snake coiled among the stones, and the animal lifts its head as though receiving an instruction. Amy hears only hissing, but Tom hears an answer. He tells the snake to remain where it is. The creature obeys. Dennis tries to laugh, though his voice breaks in the middle. Tom looks towards him and asks what he finds amusing. No one moves for several moments. Then a pile of stones shifts by itself, sliding across the cave floor in a slow, deliberate line. Amy begins to cry. Dennis backs against the wall. Tom watches them with interest rather than anger. He appears to be measuring the exact point at which fear becomes obedience. The salt wind continues across the shore while the children remain inside the cave. Outside, pale stones shine beneath the weak daylight, and the tide gathers in dark pools between them. A gull lands near the entrance, shakes water from its feathers, and flies away when Tom turns his head. The sea sounds close, then far, depending on the movement of the wind. Amy's hands tremble against her coat. Dennis keeps one shoulder pressed to the rock, as if the wall might protect him. Tom stands in the center of the small chamber. His shoes are clean despite the wet ground. His face is composed. The contrast is unsettling. Around him, everything is damp, cold, and untidy. Tom remains polished, deliberate, and untouched by the disorder he has created. When Tom finally leads them back, Amy Benson and Dennis Bishop are deeply shaken. They have no clear account of what happened in the cave, only fragments that do not fit together comfortably. There was a snake. There were stones moving without hands. Tom spoke in a language no one understood. There was a feeling that the cave had closed around them, although the entrance remained open throughout. Mrs. Cole notices their white faces before hearing their story. The children speak over one another, then fall silent whenever Tom looks towards them. He offers no defense and no confession. He simply stands with salt drying on his shoes and a faint mark of pale dust across one sleeve. The seaside excursion ends beneath a sky the colour of pewter. Back in London, the orphanage receives them with its usual smells and sounds. Coal smoke settles above the dining room. Boiled cabbage fills the air. Wet coats steam beside the stove, while rain taps against the tall windows as though the city has followed them home. Amy and Dennis avoid the table where Tom sits. They keep their eyes lowered and their hands close to their bowls. Mrs. Cole asks questions in a firm voice, but answers arrive slowly, surrounded by pauses. Tom says that they went to the cave. He says that the others were frightened. He does not say why. When Mrs. Cole asks whether he harmed them, he gives her a mild, puzzled expression. The room grows quiet enough for the rain to be heard clearly. That night, the children sleep beneath the familiar roof, but the seaside remains in their thoughts. Amy dreams of a narrow passage, filling with black water. Dennis wakes whenever the pipes knock inside the walls. Tom lies awake without moving, listening to the sounds of the building around him. He hears footsteps in the corridor, the scrape of a chair below, and the faint breathing of boys in the next room. Somewhere outside, a snake moves through wet grass near the wall. Its body makes a delicate sound against the leaves. Tom understands it. He does not need a lamp or a spoken word. The darkness is enough, and the darkness keeps what belongs to him hidden. The rain becomes softer as morning approaches. Grey light gathers behind the windows, touching the high panes before reaching the floor. The dining room fire has burned low, leaving red coals beneath a layer of ash. A kettle cools on the range. The smell of cabbage has faded, replaced by damp wood and yesterday's smoke. On the stairs, the polished rail is cold beneath your hand. Each step gives a quiet complaint as the building settles. Tom crosses the landing alone. His dark hair is smooth. His collar is fastened. His expression is calm. Behind closed doors, the other children begin to wake. Their voices rise carefully, as if the walls might carry them to him. Years later, Mrs. Cole will remember that Tom Riddle seemed to possess a secret before he possessed any knowledge of the world. He did not know about Merope Gaunt, the witch who had given him life and died soon afterwards. He did not know that she had used a love potion to make Tom Riddle SR marry her, or that she had stopped giving it to him while she was pregnant. He did not know that Tom Riddle SR had returned to Little Hangleton and abandoned Merope before the child was born. He knew only the orphanage, Mrs. Cole, the children, the rain, and the things that happened when he wanted them to happen. His parents were shadows without faces. The wizarding world was a door no one had yet opened. Afternoon light thins across the orphanage floor. Rain traces the window glass in narrow, shining paths. The coal fire murmurs quietly. Somewhere below, a pot is set upon the stove, and the room fills with the first faint scent of cabbage. The worn stair rail rests beneath your palm, smooth from years of passing hands. Tom stands at the window looking down at London. The streets are dark with water. Smoke drifts between the roofs. A bird settles on a chimney and folds its wings against the cold. Tom's reflection waits beside the rain. It is still. It is neat. It seems older than the boy who stands there. The room grows dim. Rain continues. Tom listens to the quiet building. He hears the children breathing, the fire settling, and the soft movement of something alive beyond the wall. Day withdraws from the glass. Shadows lengthen along the boards. Nothing is explained. Nothing is forgiven. The boy remains beside the window, separated from the others by silence, fear, and a secret he cannot yet name. Outside, London darkens beneath the winter sky. Inside, the orphanage becomes still. Rain taps gently against the panes. The coal fades. Night gathers. August dust rests along the pavement outside the orphanage, lifting in pale threads whenever a cart passes through the narrow London street. The warmth of the stones rises gently beneath the soles of your shoes. Beyond the entrance, the brickwork holds the afternoon heat, while the windows reflect a white, almost motionless sky. The air smells faintly of soot, dry grass, and old wood warmed by the season. Somewhere nearby, a horse moves patiently against its harness, and the leather gives a soft creak with each restrained step. Inside, the corridors remain dim even at midday, their boards polished by generations of hurried feet. You can feel the difference between the outside world and the rooms within, between the open pavement and the institution's measured silence. August light falls across a wooden cabinet, revealing scratches, dust, and the quiet dullness of things used for too long. In 1938, when Tom was 11, Albus Dumbledore came to the orphanage on a warm August afternoon. He arrived with the composed appearance of a professor accustomed to entering unfamiliar places without disturbing their order. At that time, Dumbledore was a transfiguration professor at Hogwarts, though the name of the school meant nothing to Tom. Mrs. Cole met him at the door, studied his robes and manner, and led him through the building with guarded courtesy. She began describing Tom before they reached him, speaking of unusual behavior, unsettled incidents, and small disturbances that no adult had been able to explain. Tom had already formed his own understanding of the orphanage, its routines, its punishments, and the limits of what could happen within its walls. He believed he knew the shape of every threat. A visitor, especially one who had come to ask questions, could only be carrying some new version of the same old judgment. The corridor narrows beside you, and the August brightness fades behind the glass. A thin film of dust lies upon the skirting boards, disturbed only where Mrs. Cole's shoes have passed. The smell of boiled vegetables drifts from the kitchen, joined by soap, damp cloth, and the faint mineral scent of the stone sink. From an upper room comes the slow movement of a child turning in sleep. The building seems to breathe through its pipes and floorboards as it settles into the heat. Near the cabinet, a small clock measures the afternoon with restrained ticking. Each movement carries further than it should, touching the walls and returning softened. Dumbledore's presence alters the corridor without any visible change. His robes add a deeper color to the grey surroundings, and his footsteps possess an unhurried certainty. You remain close enough to notice the dry click of his wand against the wooden cabinet when he turns. Mrs. Cole led Dumbledore to Tom after describing what she called his unusual behavior. She spoke of animals, lost objects, and incidents that seemed to occur whenever Tom had been angry or frightened. Other children had sometimes blamed him for things they could not understand. Dumbledore listened without interrupting, while Tom listened from the room where he had been waiting. He watched the visitor with a stillness that was less like shyness than calculation. Tom initially suspected that Dumbledore had come to remove him, or perhaps to send him to an institution where the rules would be harsher and the rooms more distant. The possibility did not frighten him in the ordinary way. It presented itself as a question of advantage. What could be retained, and which weaknesses might prove useful? When Mrs. Cole opened the door, Tom stood beside the window and allowed the light to fall across his face. The room is warm, but the warmth has no softness in it. Sunlight reaches the floor in a long, pale rectangle, exposing threads in the carpet and grains of dust drifting slowly through the air. The window is open only a little, enough for the smell of hot pavement to enter from the street. Curtains hang without movement, their fabric faded by years of summer light. A wooden chair gives a quiet complaint when Mrs. Cole sits down. The cabinet behind Dumbledore has a dull surface marked by cup rings and narrow scratches. His wand touches the wood with a dry, deliberate click. Beyond the wall, something alive moves lightly through a hidden space, then becomes still. The silence that follows is not empty. It contains the distant clatter of London, the ticking clock, and the careful attention of two people measuring one another. Dumbledore did not begin by offering comfort. He asked Tom a few questions, and Tom answered in the manner of a child who had learned that information could be used against him. His eyes remained fixed on Dumbledore's face, searching for impatience, fear, or concealed disgust. Mrs. Cole spoke again about the strange events, but Dumbledore's attention settled more closely upon Tom. Then he demonstrated magic. A few objects moved across the room without being touched, traveling with quiet certainty from one place to another. Dumbledore produced a small, steady flame in the air between them. Its light trembled upon Tom's features, and the meaning of his earlier experiences shifted. Things he had believed to be private acts of will now appeared as signs of an inheritance he had never been taught to recognize. The flame gives the room a second kind of light, warmer than the afternoon and clearer than the dusty sun. It rests above Dumbledore's hand without smoke, casting a faint amber color upon the cabinet and the polished edge of the chair. You can hear the tiny movement of air around it, though the fire makes no ordinary crackle. The wooden floor carries the dry smell of age, while the open window admits the stronger scent of heated stone. A fly circles once near the glass and settles upon the sill. Outside, a delivery cart passes slowly, its wheels creating a low rhythm that fades beneath the roofline. Familiar objects appear briefly unfamiliar, as though the flame has revealed another history beneath their ordinary surfaces. Even the dust seems suspended between one explanation and another. Dumbledore explained that Tom was a wizard. The word entered the room with a strange weight, carrying neither the kindness nor the menace Tom had expected from the visitor. Tom had not known that magic was part of his inheritance. He had never been told that his mother's nature had left something within him, or that his own abilities belonged to a world older than the orphanage. Dumbledore told him that Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry had accepted him. The name sounded elaborate and improbable, yet Tom did not dismiss it. He began measuring the possibilities of a new life with the same concentration he had once given to the orphanage. A school might contain knowledge, rules, rivalries, and adults whose power could be studied. It might also contain a way of leaving the place where he had been confined. The late afternoon has begun to lean towards evening, though the pavement outside still gives back its stored heat. Dust gathers in the corners of the window frame, and a thin strand of cobweb trembles near the latch. From below, crockery touches crockery in the kitchen, producing a muted series of taps. The smell of starch and old wool clings to the passage. A breeze reaches the room at last, carrying the dry odor of London brick and the distant sweetness of a flowering tree. Dumbledore's robes move slightly at the hem. The flame has vanished, but its afterimage seems to remain in the warm color of the walls. You stand within that ordinary room, surrounded by beds, cupboards, and worn blankets, while the name Hogwarts rests between you and the visitor like a door not yet opened. Tom asked whether Hogwarts was a real place. His question was direct, almost suspicious, because he had learned that promises made by adults often served purposes children were not meant to understand. Dumbledore answered calmly and continued explaining what awaited him. The school had accepted Tom, but the magical world had rules and laws. Ability did not place anyone beyond consequence. He spoke of conduct, responsibility, and the customs governing those who lived among magic. Tom listened closely to the parts that concerned authority. The existence of rules suggested the existence of institutions, and institutions suggested methods of gaining influence or finding their weaknesses. Friendship did not occupy his first thoughts. Information did. Power did. The possibility of belonging came later, if it came at all. Night approaches slowly around the orphanage, though the rooms remain lit by lamps and the last grey light. A thin darkness collects beneath the furniture, along the edges of the cupboards, and under the iron frames of the beds. The air has cooled slightly, bringing the smell of dust back into the room. Somewhere in the building, a door closes with a soft wooden thud. Voices pass along the corridor, low and indistinct, then disappear behind another wall. The window has become a dark square reflecting the room itself. Dumbledore's outline rests within the glass, steady and thoughtful. You can feel the hard edge of the chair beneath your hand, the faint roughness of the carpet, and the lingering warmth of the day in the boards beneath you. Tom asked whether he would have to return to the orphanage during the holidays. The question revealed more than concern about travel. He wanted to know whether Hogwarts could become a permanent separation from the institution, whether the new world would allow him to remain inside it. Dumbledore told him that the school could not provide permanent accommodation during the summer. The answer imposed a limit upon the possibility Tom had begun to construct. He would attend Hogwarts, but the orphanage would remain part of his life between terms. Tom did not react openly. He absorbed the information and placed it beside the other facts he had gathered. The school was real, the magic was real, and the door would open only for part of each year. His new life would not yet be entirely his own. The corridor outside is quiet enough for small sounds to become distinct. A pipe ticks behind the wall as it cools. A lamp gives off the faint scent of heated oil. The fabric of your borrowed clothing feels coarse at the elbows, and the wooden door beneath your fingertips has been worn smooth by many hands. From the street comes the distant ringing of a bicycle bell, followed by the soft hiss of wheels over dry grit. The warm pavement has lost its brightness, but it still holds a trace of summer beneath the cooler air. Above the roof, the sky deepens from pale blue to grey. No stars are visible yet. The orphanage remains enclosed, and beyond it, London continues without knowing that a boy named Tom has just been told that another world exists. Tom asked for help buying school supplies because he had no money. Dumbledore agreed to accompany him to Diagon Alley, where the necessary robes, books, parchment, and wand could be obtained. The arrangement was practical, but Tom regarded it as more than a kindness. It gave him access to a place where the ordinary rules of the orphanage could not explain what he saw. He would enter the magical world under the supervision of a professor, yet he would remain free to observe its shops, customs, and hierarchies. Dumbledore recognized that Tom was interested in power and information more than friendship. The observation remained quiet, almost hidden within his manner, but it followed them as they left the orphanage and entered the changing streets of London. Outside, the evening air is cooler against your face, and the August dust settles into the seams of the pavement. The orphanage stands behind you with its tall windows and darkening brick, holding the sounds of children, kitchens, stairs, and pipes. London smells of coal smoke, warm stone, horse sweat, and rain that has not yet fallen. Dumbledore walks beside you at an even pace, his clothing drawing occasional glances from passers-by. The street lamps brighten one after another, their light spreading across the pavement in small pools. A bus moves along the road with a deep mechanical rumble. Its windows carry brief reflections of faces, lamps, and evening sky. Your steps follow Dumbledore's through the thickening city, away from the familiar entrance and towards a place concealed among ordinary streets. The passage into Diagon Alley did not resemble the opening of a grand gate. It appeared through an arrangement of walls, brickwork, and instructions that would have remained meaningless without Dumbledore. One moment Tom was among the familiar surfaces of London, and the next he stood within a crowded street whose existence had been hidden beside his own. Shop bells sounded above the doorways. Murmured voices passed between the buildings. Signs swung gently over windows filled with objects designed for lives he had never imagined. Dumbledore guided him through the alley, but Tom's attention moved everywhere at once. He examined the displays, the clothing, the expressions of the people, and the way knowledge seemed to circulate through every shop. Diagon Alley offered him a history that had been withheld. The alley is narrow and bright beneath a sky that cannot be seen clearly between the leaning roofs. Shop fronts press close together, their windows glowing with yellow, green, and blue light. Bells chime whenever a door opens, answering one another from different parts of the street. Murmured voices rise and fall around you, softened by stone and timber, Somewhere, a crate is dragged over uneven ground, producing a slow scrape. The air carries wax, paper, dust, metal, and the faint sweetness of sugared goods. Robes brush against your sleeves as people pass. A shop sign creaks overhead, moving slightly in the evening draught. The pavement beneath you is worn smooth in the center, while the edges remain rough beneath the walls. Diagon Alley feels enclosed, but its many sounds suggest a depth beyond what the eye can hold. At the apothecary, Tom was drawn to the magical ingredients arranged in jars and boxes along the shelves. Sharp herbal scents rose from the containers, mingling with bitter roots, dry leaves, resin, mineral dust, and substances whose names he had not yet learned. He studied the labels with particular care. Dumbledore answered some of his questions, though not every answer was offered immediately. Tom wanted to understand what each ingredient could do, where it came from, and why certain materials were trusted while others were controlled. The apothecary showed him that magic was not merely a talent appearing in a person's hands. It was a discipline supported by objects, histories, classifications, and accumulated knowledge. He looked upon the shelves less as a child entering a shop than as someone approaching a library whose books had been sealed. The apothecary breathes out a dense mixture of scents. Dried herbs hang in small bundles, their leaves curled and darkened at the edges. Glass jars catch the lamplight in pale green and amber reflections. Powdered materials rest beneath wax coverings, while thick roots lie coiled in wooden trays. You smell pepper, earth, crushed stems, and something sharply medicinal that catches at the back of your throat. A brass scale gives a faint metallic note whenever the shopkeeper places another ingredient upon it. Labels overlap in several kinds of handwriting, some neat, some faded, and some marked with warning symbols. Behind the counter, drawers form a wall of narrow compartments. The wood has been polished smooth by years of use. Each jar seems to hold a small secret, preserved in silence beneath glass. Dumbledore accompanied Tom through the remaining shops of Diagon Alley, helping him obtain what Hogwarts required. Tom handled new parchment with careful fingers, noticing its dry texture and faint, clean smell. He examined wool robes, their fabric heavy and unfamiliar against his hands. At the wand shop, polished wandwood rested in narrow boxes, each piece carrying a different grain, color, and weight. The wand was not merely an object to be purchased. It represented a relationship between the student and the power he had been told he possessed. Tom listened to the shopkeeper and watched the measurements closely. He did not ask whether another child might become his friend. He wanted to know how a wand chose, how it served, and whether its strength could be increased through knowledge. The wand shop is quieter than the rest of the alley. Dust lies upon the high shelves, and the air carries the dry fragrance of cedar, ash, hawthorn, and polished walnut. Boxes stand in orderly rows, the labels small and precise. The counter has been rubbed smooth beneath countless hands. When a lid is lifted, the scent of old wood rises gently from within, clean and faintly sweet. Outside, shop bells continue to sound, but the noise reaches this room as a softened tremor. A narrow beam of light rests across the floorboards, showing tiny particles suspended above the grain. The wandwood feels cool at first, then warms slowly in your palm. Its surface is smooth, though one edge bears a subtle line where the tree once grew around a branch. By the time Tom left Diagon Alley, the magical world had become more complicated than the simple promise of escape. It contained rules, laws, money, education, trade, tradition, and people who possessed knowledge he did not. Dumbledore had shown him a doorway, but the street beyond it was crowded with older histories. Tom carried his new supplies back towards the ordinary world, along with the understanding that the orphanage was no longer the entire boundary of his existence. Hogwarts was real. Diagon Alley was real. Magic had entered the known world, and Tom intended to learn its structure. The visit did not make him gentle, and it did not give him friendship. It gave him information, and information began to gather around him like the first stones of a future fortress. The evening has become mild and dark, with warmth remaining in the walls of the alley. The paper of the new books gives off a faint, dry scent beneath the sharper traces of herbs and polished wood. Wool robes brush quietly against your legs when you move. Parchment bends with a soft whisper inside its wrapping. Shop bells continue their patient ringing, never hurried and never quite in unison. Voices drift through the narrow street, rising from doorways and fading beneath the roofs. A broom handle knocks lightly against a crate somewhere nearby. The polished surface of a wand box catches a final line of amber light. You stand among unfamiliar customs and objects, surrounded by histories that have existed without your knowledge and will continue long after the lamps have been lowered. The journey back to the orphanage carried Tom through streets that appeared unchanged, though he no longer saw them in the same way. London remained full of buses, soot, pavement, and tired buildings, yet a concealed world now existed beside it. Dumbledore did not fill the silence with unnecessary conversation. He had observed Tom closely, and Tom had observed him in return. The professor understood that the boy's questions were not guided by wonder alone. Tom wanted access, explanation, and control. Dumbledore recognized that their first meeting had opened a difficult path. In 1938, Tom returned to the orphanage with a wand, school books, and the knowledge that he was a wizard. The institution remained where it had always been, but its walls no longer contained the whole of his imagination. The pavement is cool now beneath the evening air, though August has left its warmth in the deeper stones. Street lamps form a quiet procession along the road, their reflections trembling in shallow puddles left by an earlier shower. The orphanage windows appear one by one as dark squares, some holding a dim interior glow. Smoke settles above the rooftops, and the city's larger noises merge into a low, distant breathing. A carriage passes, its wheels making a softened rhythm over the road. Your parcel rests against your side, and the parchment within gives a faint rustle when you walk. The wool of the robes retains the clean, dry smell of the shop. The wand box is smooth beneath your hand, polished wood enclosed in cardboard and silence. Years later, Harry would encounter this meeting as one of Tom Riddle's memories in the Pensive, viewed in 1996 through a basin of silver liquid and recollection. By then, the child from the orphanage had become a figure surrounded by fear, names, and unanswered history. The memory preserved the beginning, not its whole meaning. It showed Dumbledore entering the institution, Mrs. Cole describing unusual behavior, and Tom receiving the explanation that magic belonged to him. It showed the small flame, the moving objects, the questions about Hogwarts, and the concern about summer accommodation. It showed the journey to Diagon Alley, where ingredients, robes, parchment, and wand wood introduced Tom to a world that had always existed beyond the visible one. The pensive memory rests in a different kind of darkness, but the sensations remain quiet and precise. Silver light moves across the imagined corridor, turning dust into pale sparks. The dry click of Dumbledore's wand against the wooden cabinet returns as a small sound from the past. August pavement shines beyond the orphanage, while the alley glimmers with bells, murmured voices, and lamps beneath crowded roofs. Apothecary jars hold their sharp herbal scents inside clear glass. New parchment lies folded beside wool robes and polished wand wood. The details do not speak, and they do not judge. They remain where memory has placed them, waiting beneath the surface of time. Around you, the past moves slowly, carrying the child Tom from one world into another. The orphanage has grown quiet again, though the summer night has not entirely withdrawn from the windows. Dust rests upon the sill, and the pavement outside reflects a few blurred lamps. The walls retain the faint smell of coal, soap, old paper, and warmed brick. Somewhere beyond the wall, something alive moves through the darkness, pauses, and continues. A distant train passes through London with a low vibration that enters the floorboards and fades. The wooden cabinet stands where it stood before, its surface marked by scratches and age. No flame burns above it now. No wand touches its side. Yet the room contains the memory of both actions, held gently within the silence. Tom is still 11, still watching, still gathering information from every object and every pause. Dumbledore's visit did not explain the whole inheritance Tom carried. It did not reveal the history of his father, the nature of his mother, or the forms that power might later take. It gave him a name for what had happened around him and a direction in which to look. Hogwarts became real because Dumbledore had spoken it aloud. Diagon Alley became real because Tom had walked through its crowded street. The apothecary became real through its jars and sharp herbal scents. The wand became real through polished wood, careful measurement, and the promise of disciplined force. The orphanage remained real as well, waiting through the summer and returning between school terms. Tom stood between these places, belonging fully to none of them. The final warmth of August lies low along the pavement, while the upper air has begun to cool. The orphanage windows are dark, except for one small room where a lamp remains lit. Curtains hang motionless, and the glass reflects the empty corridor behind you. The smell of dust has softened into something almost neutral, mixed with the faint scent of rain held in distant clouds. Floorboards answer quietly beneath each step. The clock continues its restrained ticking, measuring a night that seems to have no urgency. Beyond the wall, the living thing makes one brief movement, then rests. London murmurs beyond the brickwork, patient and immense. Inside, the room waits with its worn carpet, wooden cabinet, and silence. The first meeting between Tom and Dumbledore became, in 1996, one of Harry's later pensive memories. It survived because memory can preserve small arrangements of light, sound, and attention long after the people within them have changed. The visitor from Hogwarts entered the orphanage, and the orphanage entered the history of the magical world. Tom heard the name Hogwarts, learned that magic was his inheritance, and began to imagine a life measured by more than the institution's narrow routines. Dumbledore saw a boy drawn towards power and information rather than friendship. The school offered learning, but it could not offer permanent shelter. The future opened, though it did not open gently. The night settles over the orphanage, softening the edges of the furniture and drawing the windows into darkness. Cool air touches your face through the narrow opening in the glass. The August dust has become still upon the sill. A trace of sharp herbs seems to linger from a shop far beyond this room and street. New parchment, wool robes, and polished wand would remain somewhere in the future, waiting to be handled again. The shop bells of Diagon Alley have faded into London's larger quiet. The dry click of Dumbledore's wand rests within memory, precise and small. Around you, the walls hold their silence, while beyond them, the city continues beneath the darkening sky. Tom returned to the orphanage with the knowledge that he was a wizard and with the understanding that Hogwarts was real. He would return to the school, learn its rules and laws, and spend his summers in the place he had hoped to leave behind. Dumbledore had opened the door, but Tom would decide what he wished to find beyond it. The objects in Diagon Alley had shown him a society organized around power, information, and inherited history. The apothecary shelves had offered ingredients whose uses could be studied. The wand shop had offered polished wood shaped for purpose. The schoolbooks had offered words. None of these things promised friendship. Together, they formed a language Tom intended to master. The room returns to its ordinary darkness, though ordinary no longer seems quite sufficient. The cabinet remains wooden and silent, marked by the passage of years. The window holds the last reflection of a lamp outside. August pavement cools beneath the night, and dust rests undisturbed along the threshold. A faint smell of wool clings to the air, mingling with old paper and the mineral dampness rising from the walls. Somewhere below, a coal settles in the grate with a small, muted sound. The children breathe in their rooms. London continues beyond the orphanage. Within the darkness, the name Hogwarts remains clear, repeated quietly by memory, by possibility, and by the boy who has not yet learned what his new inheritance will become. Steam drifts over the Hogwarts railway platform in September 1938, folding the departing train and its passengers into a soft grey veil. You stand among unfamiliar children, wearing a new uniform that gives your narrow shoulders the appearance of belonging. Dark robes fall neatly around you, their green and silver colours waiting for meaning. At the orphanage, you were Tom Riddle, a boy whose name travelled through bare corridors and dormitory rooms. Here, Tom Riddle is a pupil, carried northward beneath a sky heavy with autumn rain. The train smells of coal, leather, metal, and warm fabric, while the windows tremble gently in their frames. Beyond the platform, hills withdraw beneath mist, and hedges slide past impatient green lines. You hold your case close, listening to distant voices, careful footsteps, and the quiet movement of a world that has accepted you without asking questions. The journey from London gives you several hours in which nobody knows your history, your habits, or the precise circumstances of your childhood. Your new uniform has been measured, purchased, and fastened, but the deeper transformation remains private. You are travelling towards Hogwarts in September 1938, towards a school whose ancient towers rise beyond the limits of ordinary maps. Other pupils speak freely in the compartments, comparing families, villages, brothers, sisters, and summer adventures. You answer courteously when addressed, offering enough information to appear composed without allowing anyone close enough to examine you. The train carries you through fields darkened by rain, past stations where lamps shine against the dusk. Each mile places greater distance between you and the orphanage, while the name Tom Riddle acquires a new setting, a new uniform, and a future that seems ready to be claimed. At the castle, the sorting ceremony takes place beneath a ceiling resembling the open night, though no wind enters the hall. You stand among the first-year pupils, while candles float above long tables crowded with older students. The sorting hat settles over your hair and lowers the hall into darkness, leaving only its old voice near your thoughts. Its decision is Slytherin. Applause rises from the table dressed in green and silver, and you cross towards it with measured steps. Slytherin House gives you a place beside the lake, beneath stone corridors where the water presses against greenish windows. There, candlelight is reflected in the glass, trembling like pale fragments beneath the surface. The room is cool, quiet, and enclosed, with leather chairs, dark wood, and the muffled currents of the castle moving overhead. For the first time, ancestry begins to seem like something that might be possessed. Your first nights in Slytherin pass beneath a ceiling of shadowed stone, where the lake casts shifting light across the common room. Candle flames lean slightly whenever the doors open, then recover their steady shapes. The greenish windows show wavering water and the indistinct forms of plants brushing against the glass. A low fire gives warmth to the nearest chairs, though the farther corners remain cool beneath carved arches. Your trunk rests beside a bed that is now officially yours, and the unfamiliar room gradually gathers the signs of occupation. Ink, wool, polished wood, and damp stone mingle in the air. Voices fade along the dormitory passage as pupils settle beneath heavy blankets. You lie awake with the name Hogwarts moving through your thoughts, while the lake presses silently against the walls and Slytherin House receives you into its old, secretive quiet. Lessons begin with ordinary demands, and you meet them with an unusual precision that soon becomes difficult for others to ignore. You remember instructions exactly, solve problems quickly, and approach difficult subjects without the hesitations troubling many classmates. In transfiguration, charms, potions, and the history of magic, your answers are clear enough to satisfy strict teachers. You excel in many subjects, and your academic gifts become part of the impression you create around the school. Teachers find you attentive, prepared, and courteous, with an instinct for speaking at the right moment. Influential adults receive the same polished version of you, carefully maintained through respectful conversation and controlled expressions. Approval gathers gradually, first from professors, then from visitors, governors, and other adults whose opinions carry weight. You cultivate that approval patiently, treating admiration as a resource whose usefulness will increase with time. Rain passes over the castle courtyards in long silver curtains, darkening the flagstones and filling shallow hollows between the paving blocks. From covered walkways, you watch water collect along the edges of ancient walls. The stone smells mineral and cold, touched by moss in shaded places and warmed slightly where lamps burn nearby. Cloaks brush against the passages, carrying the scent of wet wool into the corridors. Small streams run beneath iron grates, making a subdued sound beneath the distant movement of students. Your shoes leave faint marks on the damp floor before the water disappears into the stone. Through archways, the grounds become blurred shapes of lawn, trees, and leaning branches. The weather makes the castle feel more enclosed, while rain and darkness soften every boundary between classroom, courtyard, tower, and underground room. Admiration does not become intimacy, because you offer classmates a carefully measured surface and keep the deeper chambers of yourself unlit. You speak pleasantly, lend books when useful, and show patience during conversations that might otherwise become tedious. Yet you reveal little of your fears, memories, ambitions, or private judgments. No close friendships form around you, although many pupils recognize your intelligence and enjoy the advantages of your attention. You are considered handsome, courteous, and highly controlled in public, an impression strengthened by the calm arrangement of your clothes and manner. Your composure seems admirable to teachers and faintly unsettling to some students. A few classmates begin to remain near you after lessons, drawn by confidence, ability, or the possibility of advancement. Their interest does not trouble you, because company can be useful without becoming personal. In the library, the dry smell of old books rests above the tables like a second ceiling, mixed with dust, leather, glue, and fading ink. Tall shelves create narrow lanes where footsteps become soft and indistinct. Rain taps against high windows, while lamps cast small pools of amber across open pages. The wooden tables carry scratches from generations of study, and the grain feels smooth beneath your fingertips. Dust gathers along the edges of atlases, histories, and volumes bound in cracked green leather. Somewhere beyond the nearest shelves, a chair moves carefully across the floor. The air remains still except for turning pages and the faint scrape of quills during evening study. You sit beneath the lamps for long periods, surrounded by paper and silence, while the castle's older voices wait inside books that most pupils never think to open. The more you study, the more the school's history appears to contain an architecture of power beneath its formal lessons and ceremonies. You learn that Salazar Slytherin was one of Hogwarts' 4 founders, and his name begins to occupy your attention. The founder is not merely a figure in a textbook, but a predecessor whose house still bears his identity. You become interested in Salazar Slytherin's belief that Muggle-born students should be excluded from Hogwarts. That belief offers a language of distinction, ancestry, and authority that seems to answer questions you have carried without naming. You search the castle's history for evidence of Slytherin's hidden legacy, reading accounts of disputes, renovations, vanished chambers, and traditions preserved through rumor. The old stories become a map of possible power, with gaps that invite careful investigation rather than simple acceptance. Evening study gathers beneath lamps whose light reaches only partway across the tables, leaving shelves and alcoves in a brownish darkness. The dry library air thickens around you as pages are opened, examined, and return to their places. A quill scratches steadily at a nearby desk, then pauses while its owner searches for a word. Rain moves outside, though its sound reaches the library only as a faint, broken murmur. The windows have turned black, reflecting lamps, faces, and the slow passage of robes between the shelves. Your fingers acquire a trace of dust from the bindings, and the edge of one old volume leaves a small mark on your cuff. Nothing in the room announces discovery, yet every shelf seems capable of preserving a secret longer than any living witness. Among the Slytherin students, a circle gradually gathers around you, formed from talented pupils, ambitious pupils, and those who understand the value of proximity. They sit near you at meals, wait outside classrooms, and follow conversations in which you speak with unusual certainty. Several students become accustomed to your direction before they recognize that direction has replaced friendship. You assign no formal titles, yet each person learns where to stand, when to speak, and which subjects deserve your attention. Their admiration is encouraged by small acts of recognition, private explanations, and the promise of shared importance. You understand that a group can extend an individual's influence beyond the reach of one voice. Over time, several of those students become your followers, carrying your opinions into rooms where you are not present. Their loyalty remains useful precisely because you do not confuse it with affection. A pale morning settles over the lake, and the greenish windows of the common room hold a dim, underwater glow. Water shifts beyond the glass in broad, slow folds, turning candlelight into trembling bands across the ceiling. The lamps burn with small golden halos, their brass fittings dulled by age and constant handling. Velvet chairs retain the warmth of earlier occupants, while the stone beneath the rugs remains cold. A book lies open beside the fire, its pages lifting slightly whenever the chimney draws. Beyond the common room, footsteps pass through the corridor and diminish beneath the thick doors. You hear the distant bell marking the hour, followed by the muted movement of pupils leaving for lessons. Within the chamber, Slytherin's colors surround you, and the atmosphere suggests inheritance more strongly than comfort. Your search continues through records that describe the founders as people of powerful gifts, distinct temperaments, and unresolved disagreements. Salazar Slytherin appears repeatedly in references to blood, secrecy, and the protection of knowledge from those considered unworthy. You trace his name through histories of the castle, school registers, architectural notes, and accounts written by later scholars. The effort requires patience, because important evidence has been concealed beneath euphemism, omission, or deliberate contradiction. Eventually, you learn that Hogwarts has a chamber of secrets, said to contain a monster that only Slytherin's heir could control. The chamber is described in uncertain language, but its central promise remains consistent. Somewhere within the castle lies a hidden inheritance, and somewhere within the school lives the heir who may open it. The possibility enters your thoughts and remains there, quiet, persistent, and increasingly difficult to dismiss. Winter presses against the castle windows, covering the courtyards with wet darkness before afternoon lessons have ended. Meltwater gathers beneath cloaks and drips from umbrellas left near the entrances. The corridors smell of stone, smoke, and the faint sweetness of polished furniture warmed by lamps. In the common room, candlelight trembles across the greenish windows, where the lake has become a dark, moving presence. The fire gives occasional warmth to the backs of your hands, while your face remains cool in the surrounding air. Students speak more softly during the long evenings, and their voices mingle with the low ticking of a clock. On tables, abandoned parchment curls at the edges, and ink dries in narrow pools beside uncapped quills. Beneath the ordinary noises of school life, the word chamber seems to possess its own patient silence. The chamber of secrets becomes an object of private study, and you compare every mention until the story begins to form a pattern. You examine maps, architectural descriptions, founders' correspondence, and passages concerning rooms sealed after the earliest years. The monster remains unnamed in several accounts, as though language itself has been restrained. Other records insist that Slytherin's heir alone could command it, making descent more important than achievement. You do not accept the legend as a childish tale, because the castle's structure contains enough hidden passages to make secrecy plausible. Your questions become narrower, more exact, and more dangerous. You begin to wonder whether the heir's identity has survived through a family line rather than a public title. Salazar Slytherin, the Chamber of Secrets, and the hidden monster settle into one connected thought. The library grows quieter as the year advances, with snow or rain whitening the high panes and shortening the visible day. The dry smell of old books becomes stronger near the restricted shelves, where bindings have gathered centuries of dust. Brass lamps shine upon diagrams, family trees, and faded marginal notes. Your chair makes a small sound whenever you shift your weight, and the librarian's steps remain almost noiseless between the shelves. Around you, quills continue their steady work, fine as rain against the silence. Outside, water runs from gargoyles and gathers beneath the courtyard arches. Cold enters whenever the door opens, carrying the scent of wet wool and distant chimney smoke. You keep your pages arranged in exact piles, creating a small ordered territory inside the larger darkness of the library. The answer comes through the Gaunt family, whose name appears in records marked by poverty, isolation, and direct descent from Salazar Slytherin. You discover that you are descended from Salazar Slytherin through the Gaunt family, and the discovery alters the meaning of your school identity. Slytherin House is no longer merely the house that received you in September 1938. It becomes a place connected to blood, memory, and a founder whose hidden legacy might have been waiting for you. The Gaunt name carries little public honor, yet its ancestry supplies what you require. You possess the line that the Chamber's legend demands, even if the world has failed to recognize it. The Orphanage, London, and the narrow circumstances of your childhood recede behind this older inheritance. Salazar Slytherin becomes both ancestor and possibility, repeated silently within the name Tom Riddle. Snow rests along the courtyard ledges, while rain continues to fall from the higher roofs and darken the paths below. Through an archway, you see water shining beneath a grey sky, gathering in grooves worn by countless feet. The castle walls hold the cold, and the air inside carries the clean, mineral scent of damp masonry. Lamps burn beside portraits whose painted figures watch the passage with varied degrees of attention. In the Slytherin common room, greenish windows show only darkness and drifting bubbles. Candlelight moves over the polished arms of chairs, over silver trim, and across the edges of your books. The lake remains invisible beyond the glass, yet its pressure seems present in every quiet pause. You walk slowly through the room, with the old stones beneath you and an inherited story taking shape around your footsteps. Your public manner grows more controlled as your private theories become more ambitious, because you understand that suspicion begins with careless display. You remain courteous to teachers, precise in lessons, and attentive whenever an influential adult enters the room. The approval of teachers and influential adults continues to accumulate, giving you opportunities to ask questions without appearing to seek power. You become a prefect during your school years, and the badge confirms the authority that classmates already associate with you. Younger pupils lower their voices when you pass, while older students acknowledge the discipline of your conduct. Your followers interpret each official responsibility as proof that your judgment is trusted. You know that admiration can be cultivated through restraint, punctuality, and an appearance of service. Dumbledore, however, remains suspicious of Tom and watches you more closely than most teachers, noticing the distance between your manners and your intentions. The castle's upper windows rattle beneath a night wind, while rain darkens the courtyards and turns the grounds into shifting reflections. Water beads on the iron railings and falls in slow drops from carved stone creatures. The corridors are warmer near the kitchens, cooler beneath the towers, and almost breathless in the older stairwells. A faint scrape of quills comes from a classroom where pupils are completing essays after supper. Somewhere above, a door closes, and the sound travels through the stairwell in diminishing echoes. Your prefect's badge catches a narrow line of candlelight whenever you turn. The metal feels smooth and cool against your robes, a small object carrying the visible confidence of the school. Beneath it, your thoughts remain directed towards rooms no badge could open. The question of Horcruxes first reaches the surface in conversation with Professor Slughorn, while you are still a student at Hogwarts. You approach him with the careful respect that has served you with other teachers, allowing curiosity to appear scholarly rather than personal. The subject is dangerous, and you understand that even the word may disturb someone accustomed to polite academic boundaries. You ask Professor Slughorn about the creation of Horcruxes, framing the question as an inquiry into obscure magical theory. He responds with discomfort, offering fragments of explanation and attempting to close the conversation before it deepens. You listen closely to what he says, and also to what he avoids saying. The exchange remains brief, yet its significance extends beyond the room. Knowledge can divide the soul, and you have begun to consider division as a form of survival. In Slughorn's office, lamplight rests upon silver containers, polished objects, and shelves crowded with bottles of unusual color. The room carries the scents of tobacco, old wood, dried plants, and sweet preserves kept for visitors. Rain taps against the window, interrupted by occasional drops sliding down the glass. A small fire burns behind a decorative screen, giving the furniture a warm edge while leaving the corners indistinct. The professor's robes rustle when he moves, and his voice becomes quieter around certain subjects. You remain seated with your hands composed, feeling the smooth grain of the chair beneath your fingers. Beyond the walls, pupils cross the corridor in groups, their laughter softened by distance. Inside, the word Horcrux hangs briefly between you, heavy and unnatural, before the conversation returns to safer forms of study. By the later years of your education, the school sees a highly successful pupil, a prefect, and a young man whose public discipline appears almost complete. You have excelled in many subjects, earned the confidence of teachers, and gathered several Slytherin students into a circle that follows your lead. Your classmates know your courtesy, your handsome appearance, and your ability to speak with calm assurance. They do not know the full extent of your search through the castle's history, nor the importance you attach to Salazar Slytherin. They do not know that the Chamber of Secrets has become an inward landmark. They do not know that the Gaunt family places you among Slytherin's descendants. Your private life remains closed, even while your reputation expands. Admiration surrounds you, but genuine friendship does not, and the distinction becomes part of your strength. Dawn enters the Slytherin common room as a diluted green brightness, passing through the lake before reaching the windows. The candles have shortened during the night, and their wax has cooled into uneven ridges around the holders. A log collapses quietly in the grate, sending a few sparks upward before the fire settles. The rugs hold the faint scent of dust, wool, and smoke, while the stone retains the lake's chill. Outside, water drifts past the windows with slow, wavering shadows. Beyond the doors, the castle begins to wake through distant footsteps, opening hinges, and the muted exchange of voices. You stand beside the dark table, your prefect's badge resting against your chest and your schoolbooks gathered under one arm. The room remains enclosed, but the old castle seems to breathe through its walls. The castle's old stories have become a map of possible power, and you now read them with the confidence of someone who has found a position within their design. Salazar Slytherin was one of Hogwarts' 4 founders, and his house has preserved his name through generations. His belief that Muggle-born students should be excluded offers you an idea of inherited distinction. His Chamber of Secrets offers a hidden place, a monster, and an authority reserved for his heir. The Gaunt family gives you the descent required by the legend, linking Tom Riddle to Salazar Slytherin across poverty, secrecy, and time. Professor Slughorn has revealed only a portion of what you sought about Horcruxes, but even that portion remains with you. Dumbledore continues to watch you closely, sensing that your questions possess a direction others cannot yet see. Hogwarts has given you a name, a house, and a history, while your private ambitions wait beneath them in silence. During the summer journey away from Hogwarts, you travel beneath a pale morning sky, carrying books, robes, and the private questions that have gathered around your name. You return to the orphanage during the school holidays, though the prospect of spending each summer in the Muggle institution has become more disagreeable with every passing year. The corridors remain narrow, the meals plain, and the familiar rooms offer no explanation for the strange inheritance awakening within you. Hogwarts has shown you a world concealed behind ordinary streets, and the orphanage now appears smaller because of that knowledge. You remember the castle towers, the long galleries, and the ancient portraits whose names reach backwards through centuries. Against that splendor, the institution seems temporary, colorless, and without ancestry. Your summer visits therefore become less a return than a period of waiting, measured by departure dates and railway timetables. Within you, the orphan boy begins to separate from the student who has learned that blood, language, and history may open doors. Dry summer grass leans across the road beneath the weight of the warm afternoon. Dust rises softly beneath each step, drifting around your shoes before settling among the pale stalks and small stones. Along the distant fields, hedges hold their dark green color beneath the sun, while the air above the road trembles almost imperceptibly. A faint scent of earth comes from the banks, mixed with the sharper odor of crushed weeds and old wooden fences. The countryside appears peaceful, although the silence contains small, persistent sounds. Insects hum among the grasses, a bird calls once from a distant tree, and somewhere beyond the folds of the land, a village church bell marks the hour. The sound reaches you softened by distance, each note fading into the broad warmth around you. Little Hangleton lies ahead, hidden beyond the lanes and fields, while the road carries you towards a family that has survived by withdrawing from the world. The name Marvolo becomes the first clear thread in your search for the missing family. You have learned that Marvolo belonged to your maternal grandfather, a fact that changes the shape of your questions. Until then, the name seemed merely unusual, another fragment of an unknown inheritance. Now it points towards a living branch of ancestry, hidden somewhere beyond the orphanage and the Riddle name. You study the name as though it were an old inscription, examining its sound, its age, and the authority you imagine within it. Your search leads from the Riddle name to the Gaunt family, a poor, pure-blood family living near Little Hangleton. The movement is quiet but decisive. You are no longer wondering whether you possess a magical past. You are tracing the path by which that past may be claimed. Marvolo Gaunt stands at the far end of the search, surrounded by secrecy, poverty, and the remnants of an older pride. Inside the Gaunt cottage, dust and stale air remain suspended in the narrow rooms. The walls seem to have absorbed years of smoke, quarrels, and damp weather, leaving the interior with a heavy, enclosed smell. Cracked furniture presses against uneven boards, its surfaces worn smooth where hands have rested and splintered where age has taken hold. Tarnished silver lies among neglected objects, catching the weak light without returning it brightly. A cup, a spoon, and an old ornament carry the dull gleam of things once valued and later abandoned. Through a small window, the summer fields appear strangely distant, their brightness separated from the cottage by dirty glass. The air scarcely moves inside, and each breath seems to gather traces of dust from the floor and ceiling. Beyond the walls, the distant bells of a village church pass over the land, reminding the house that other lives continue nearby. Marvolo Gaunt possesses a ring bearing the symbol of the Peveril family, and the object gives you another sign of ancient descent. The ring is not merely jewelry within the Gaunt household. It is treated as proof that the family stands above ordinary people. Marvolo's pride gathers around the ring, the Gaunt name, and the claim that their blood reaches back to Salazar Slytherin. The Gaunts regard their descent from Slytherin as a source of superiority, although their supposed distinction has brought them neither comfort nor security. Their house is isolated, impoverished, and marked by family violence. The prestige they praise exists beside empty cupboards, broken objects, and tempers that turn quickly towards cruelty. You study this contradiction with a careful attention that resembles sympathy only from a distance. You see the old blood, the ancient symbol, and the secret name, yet you also see what obsession with purity has produced. The cottage holds the close odor of old timber, dried mud, and dust warmed by the summer sun. A narrow patch of light lies across the floor, revealing loose fibers and tiny fragments of plaster. The brightness does not reach the corners, where shadows collect around cupboards and damaged chairs. Tarnished silver rests on a shelf beside a cracked mirror, and both objects carry the same exhausted appearance. The mirror's surface has darkened at its edges, turning reflections indistinct and grey. From outside comes the faint rasp of insects moving through dry grass, accompanied by an occasional creak from the cottage roof. The walls offer little protection from the heat, and the stale air seems to have remained unchanged since the previous winter. When the church bells sound again, the notes pass through the room as if through water. The house remains still after each chime, holding its silence beneath the weight of names older than its walls. Marvolo's son is Morfin Gaunt, who can also speak Parseltongue, and this inheritance gives you a more immediate connection to the family. The language of snakes, once a private mystery, now becomes a family trait linking you to the Gaunts and to Slytherin himself. Morfin's manner is violent and unstable, yet the power of his speech confirms what you have already suspected. The gift is not an accident of the orphanage, nor an isolated peculiarity belonging only to you. It has crossed generations, moving through a bloodline the Gaunts have protected with bitterness. Merope Gaunt is Morfin's sister and your mother, though the connection provides no tenderness in the account that reaches you. Her life has been obscured by the family's poverty, Morfin's cruelty, and the choices that carried her away from Little Hangleton. You receive these facts as evidence rather than memories. You arrange them into a structure, placing Marvolo, Morfin, Merope, and yourself along one concealed line. Heat gathers beneath the low roof, and the air above the table seems almost visible. Dust settles over the wood in a fine, pale film, softening the edges of scratches and old stains. A cracked chair gives a small wooden complaint when its weight shifts, then becomes quiet again. Somewhere outside, a horse moves along a distant lane, its hooves muffled by the dry ground. The sound fades towards the village, leaving the cottage with the faint ticking of cooling metal and the whisper of grass against the outer wall. A tarnished object near the window reflects a narrow strip of sunlight, but the gleam disappears whenever the air stirs. Even the summer brightness seems weakened by the interior, as though it has crossed too much dust before reaching you. The distant church bells return at intervals, carrying a measured rhythm through the stillness and over the fields surrounding Little Hangleton. The Gaunt family reveals both the prestige and the poverty of pure-blood obsession. Their belief in superiority has preserved a story, a symbol, and a lineage, but it has not preserved their house. The family has guarded its separation from Muggles while allowing its own life to collapse inward. Marvolo clings to the Peveril ring as though the object could restore the authority of earlier centuries. Morfin holds to inherited contempt through violence and suspicion. Merope remains within the same narrow world, possessing the blood they praise, but none of the power they claim it should provide. You see that the Gaunts have converted ancestry into a weapon directed at everyone around them. Their pride offers no shelter from hunger, no escape from loneliness, and no protection against the decay of their own household. Yet their connection to Slytherin matters, because it offers what the Orphanage has denied, a lineage that can be spoken aloud and used as a foundation. Outside the cottage, dry grass brushes against the road in small, repetitive movements. The stalks are faded to straw along the edges, while deeper in the fields, green remains beneath the heat. Dust hangs above the track where carts and shoes have disturbed it, forming a thin veil between the ground and the open sky. The village church stands beyond the hedges, its bell tower pale against the distant trees. Each bell note seems to travel across the same unchanged landscape, touching roofs, fields, and the broken walls of the gaunt house. Warm air presses gently against your face, carrying the scent of grass, sun-baked soil, and faint smoke from a far-off chimney. Nothing in the landscape announces the presence of an ancient magical family. Little Hangleton appears ordinary, and the gaunt cottage appears merely poor, yet beneath that ordinary surface lies the ancestry you have been seeking. You visit Little Hangleton in the summer of your 16th year, following the trail towards the place where your maternal family has lived. The journey becomes a search for a missing family, though the family itself is already divided by resentment, secrecy, and death. You find the gaunt house in poor condition, its walls and furnishings reflecting the long consequences of isolation. The cottage does not resemble the ancestral seat you may have imagined. It is cramped, neglected, and burdened by the evidence of violence. Still, the house gives you something valuable, a location, a household, and a name that can be placed upon the map. Here, Marvolo is no longer an unusual word inherited from nowhere. Here, Morfin speaks the language of snakes, and Merope's place in the line becomes clear. The discovery satisfies one part of your search while deepening another. The Gaunts provide a powerful ancestry, but they also reveal the humiliating condition into which that ancestry has fallen. Warm dust hangs over the Riddle estate, settling across the drive and the low stone walls. The estate lies apart from the poorer cottages, enclosed by trees and marked by the broad proportions of a house built for comfort. Sunlight rests on the gravel in a pale sheet, while the windows hold dark reflections of the surrounding grounds. Dry leaves remain beneath the hedges despite the summer season, and their brittle edges shift whenever a faint breeze enters from the fields. The distant church bells sound from the village, appearing to come from behind the trees and then from somewhere much farther away. Within the stillness, the estate seems to carry its own silence, deeper than the quiet of the lanes. Dust moves lazily above the road, and the warm air smells of stone, grass, and old paint. The house offers no magical sign, yet its size and seclusion make it important in the account you are assembling. You learn that your father lived in a large house called the Riddle House, and the knowledge gives your search a second destination. The name Riddle now refers not only to an orphaned boy in a Muggle institution, but to a house, a family, and a man who once possessed the life you were denied. You discover that your father was a Muggle, a fact that strikes against the identity you have been building from the Gaunt line. The Riddle name carries no hidden wizarding dignity. It belongs instead to the ordinary world from which you have tried to separate yourself. Your father's house stands in contrast to the Gaunt cottage, possessing space and comfort where the magical family has endured poverty. You do not receive this contrast as a neutral detail. The Riddle estate becomes an object for your resentment, while the Muggle identity attached to it becomes something to reject. Your search for ancestry shifts into a search for superiority. The road near the Riddle estate is lighter beneath the sun, though dust still gathers in the shallow marks left by wheels. Warm air moves through the trees and carries the dry scent of bark, grass, and distant fields. A gate stands beneath a canopy of leaves, its iron surface hot beneath the day and roughened by years of weather. Beyond it, the estate grounds spread into shadowed lawns, where the grass remains longer and darker than along the village road. The silence is interrupted by small movements, a leaf turning against another leaf, a fly striking glass, and the soft creak of branches overhead. Far away, the church bells of Little Hangleton measure the afternoon with patient intervals. Their sound travels across both the humble cottages and the larger property, joining places that you experience as sharply unequal. Dust continues to hover above the drive, glowing briefly whenever a shaft of light reaches it. You reject the surname Riddle and seek a more powerful identity in your ancestry. The decision is not simply a matter of taste, since the name represents the Muggle father whose absence has shaped your life. Riddle connects you to a family that possessed a grand house but offered you no place within it. The gaunt name, despite its poverty, provides a line leading to Salazar Slytherin and to the old world of wizarding authority. You begin to understand that identity can be selected, arranged, and displayed according to the power it seems to contain. You will not remain merely Tom Riddle, an orphan with a common surname and no acknowledged family. You will draw from Marvolo, Morphin, Merope, and Slytherin, choosing the parts of your inheritance that strengthen your claim. The search has moved beyond the recovery of facts. It now concerns the construction of a name that can command fear, respect, and remembrance. The summer light lowers gradually across the fields, turning the dry grass to copper and the dust to a faint golden haze. Heat remains in the stones along the roadside, although the air has begun to cool beneath the hedgerows. The church bells sound once more, their notes softer now and separated by longer stretches of quiet. Inside the gaunt cottage, stale air lingers around the cracked furniture, and the tarnished silver holds the last weak reflection from the window. Outside, the Riddle estate rests behind its trees, its walls touched by the same evening light that falls upon the poorer house. Two places remain connected by one family story, though neither offers you the kind of belonging you have imagined. The wind passes through the dry grass with a low, brushing sound. Night begins to gather in the hollows, while Little Hangleton settles beneath the fading brightness. The discovery of your father's Muggle identity deepens your resentment because it denies the explanation you want most. You have expected your ancestry to reveal a hidden greatness, and the Gaunts provide part of that greatness through their connection with Slytherin. Yet the Riddle side offers no comparable prestige, only a large house and a Muggle man who abandoned Merrow. You interpret the separation as a personal insult, rather than as one consequence of many difficult circumstances. Your father becomes an emblem of ordinary blood, ordinary weakness, and the unwanted life from which you have always felt excluded. The more clearly you see the difference between the Riddle estate and the Gaunt cottage, the more intensely you judge both. One family possesses wealth without magic, while the other possesses magic without dignity. You accept neither condition. You search for a third identity, built from the oldest and most formidable name within your reach. Night air moves across the road with a cooler touch, lifting the last warmth from the dust. The grass along the lane whispers under the faint breeze, and small insects gather near the hedges where the ground remains warm. Above the village, the sky darkens slowly from faded blue to a deeper color, leaving the first stars uncertain behind thin summer haze. The church bell sounds across Little Hangleton, its low note entering the spaces between the trees and cottages. The Riddle estate becomes a darker mass beyond its gate, while the Gaunt house seems to withdraw into the surrounding fields. No light appears strong enough to erase the marks of neglect from its windows and walls. Dust has settled over the road, the stone steps, and the neglected objects within the cottage. The night does not soften the difference between the two families, but it places both beneath one quiet sky. The Gaunt's claim to descent from Slytherin gives you the ancestry you need, yet their behavior teaches you that blood alone does not create authority. Marvellow's ring bears the symbol of the Peveril family, but the old silver is tarnished, and the cottage around it is falling apart. Morphin can speak Parseltongue, but his gift is joined to rage, cruelty, and a life narrowed by suspicion. Merope carries the same blood, though the family grants her little dignity within its hierarchy. The Gaunt household, therefore, becomes a lesson in the limits of inherited pride. You see that a name must be joined to will, intelligence, and deliberate action before it can dominate others. You do not abandon the Gaunt ancestry because of its poverty. Instead, you separate the line's imagined greatness from the family's visible failure. Slytherin becomes not a memory to honor, but a foundation from which you may rise above both the Gaunts and the Riddles. The cottage grows colder after sunset, though its stale smell remains trapped in the fabric of the rooms. Dust lies along the skirting boards, gathered in thin ridges beneath walls whose plaster has cracked with age. Tarnished silver catches the moonlight in faint, uneven marks, while the damaged furniture casts long shapes across the floor. From beyond the window comes the rustle of dry grass and the occasional movement of an animal along the field boundary. The village church is quiet for a time, leaving the night filled with small sounds that seem close because the larger world has fallen still. A branch touches the outer wall, withdraws, and touches it again with patient irregularity. The cottage appears to breathe through its gaps and warped boards. Beneath that fragile shelter, the names Marvellow, Morphin, Merope, and Slytherin remain present in your thoughts, each one carrying a different weight. The summer journey has taken you from the orphanage to Little Hangleton, from the Riddle name to the Gaunt family, and from uncertainty towards a deliberate form of self-invention. You have found a poor, pure-blood family living near Little Hangleton, isolated from the wider wizarding world and consumed by its own belief in superiority. You have found Marvellow Gaunt, the grandfather whose name once seemed to float without explanation. You have found Morphin, the Parselmouth, and Merope, your mother, whose life links the Gaunts to the Muggle Riddles. You have found the ring bearing the Peveril symbol, a small object carrying the weight of ancient blood. You have found the Riddle house, large and warm in memory, yet attached to a father you now understand as a Muggle. Each discovery has narrowed your sympathy and sharpened your ambition. The family you sought has not welcomed you, but it has furnished you with the materials for a more commanding identity. The road lies silvered beneath the moon, with dry grass bending in slow waves along either side. Fine dust has gathered in the hollows and remains pale where the night light touches it. The fields beyond the hedges appear broad and empty, their boundaries softened by darkness. Little Hangleton rests under a quiet sky, while the church tower rises above the village like a patient marker of time. No bell sounds now, yet the memory of its measured notes seems to remain in the air. The Riddle estate is hidden behind trees, its warm rooms and large windows belonging to a world you cannot accept as your own. The Gaunt cottage is darker and poorer, but its broken interior has given you a lineage connected to Salazar Slytherin. Between the two places, the road continues through the fields, carrying the old names forwards into the silence. Your rejection of Riddle is therefore joined to your acceptance of a greater inheritance. You do not seek reconciliation between the two branches of your family, because reconciliation would require you to value the Muggle side that has become the object of your resentment. The Gaunts offer a story of magical superiority, even though their house is marked by poverty and violence. Slytherin offers a name that reaches beyond the failures of Marvolo, Morphin, and Merope. You begin to believe that ancestry can be purified by choice, with weakness discarded and power retained. Your identity will not be an accidental mixture of the orphanage, the Riddle estate, and the gaunt cottage. It will be shaped according to your own design, with the oldest name placed at its center. The search for a missing family has become a search for an elevated self, protected from ordinariness by secrecy and fear. Morning returns quietly over Little Hangleton, laying a thin brightness along the road and the roofs of the village. Dew rests briefly upon the dry grass before the rising warmth begins to draw it away. Dust remains in the wheel marks, softened by the cooler night and ready to lift beneath the first passing cart. The church bell gives a subdued note across the fields, and birds begin calling from the trees around the Riddle estate. Within the gaunt cottage, stale air slowly changes as light enters through the small window. Cracked furniture appears less threatening in daylight, though its damage remains visible, and tarnished silver lies dull upon the shelf. The rooms hold the evidence of a family that has guarded its blood while losing the ordinary comforts of life. Beyond the walls, the road runs towards the village and away from it, carrying the memory of Marvolo, Morphin, Merope, and Slytherin into another day. The name Slytherin now stands before you as both inheritance and instrument. Through the gaunts, you have reached across poverty, secrecy, and time to a founder whose authority still shapes the school you attend. Through the riddles, you have found the Muggle origin you wish to deny, and the father whose existence has become inseparable from your anger. Little Hangleton has supplied the locations, names, and objects required to transform vague suspicion into a private doctrine. You return from the search with no recovered family embrace, no repaired household, and no gentle explanation of your childhood. You return instead with a conviction that the past belongs to whoever can master its symbols. The gaunt ring, Parseltongue, the cottage, the Riddle house, and the name Slytherin gather within your mind as parts of one design. In the quiet months ahead, ancestry will no longer be something you discover. It will become something you use. The fields around Little Hangleton settle beneath the pale daylight, and the warmth begins to gather once more in the road. Dry grass gives off a faint, sweet scent where the sun reaches it, while the shaded earth retains the cooler smell of night. Dust rises from the distant lane in a slow cloud behind a cart, then thins until the hedges become clear again. The church bells move across the village at an even pace, the sound passing over the Riddle estate and the gaunt cottage without distinction. Somewhere inside the old house, cracked furniture remains beneath its covering of dust, and tarnished silver waits in the dimness. Somewhere beyond the trees, the large Riddle house stands in its warm, silent grounds. The two homes remain separated by wealth, blood, and memory, while the road between them holds the footsteps of a boy searching for a name powerful enough to replace his own. You leave Little Hangleton carrying the knowledge that your family has existed, though not in the form you wanted. Marvolo Gaunt has given you the maternal grandfather whose name began the search. Morphin Gaunt has confirmed the inheritance of Parseltongue. Merope Gaunt has connected the ancient line to the Muggle riddles. The Gaunts have revealed the prestige and poverty produced by pure-blood obsession. The Riddle house has supplied the setting for your father's life, and the discovery that your father was a Muggle has supplied a new object for resentment. From these fragments, you construct a conclusion that is both narrow and powerful. You will not belong to the orphanage, the Riddles, or the broken Gaunts. You will belong to the oldest name you can claim, and you will make that name answer to your will. The road away from Little Hangleton becomes the first quiet passage towards a new identity, formed in the shadow of Salazar Slytherin. You are standing within Hogwarts in the years after Tom Riddle has learned the name of Salazar Slytherin. The castle rises around you in towers, staircases, galleries, and courtyards, yet Tom's attention turns steadily downward, towards the older stone beneath the school. For 5 years, Tom spends his spare hours investigating the Chamber of Secrets. He searches Hogwarts with a patience rarely revealed upon his face, tracing fragments of legend through dusty records, half-remembered conversations, and corridors avoided by ordinary pupils. The castle grows quiet beneath the evening sky. Cool tiled walls lie beneath classrooms and stairwells, while water drips through an abandoned bathroom in slow, measured intervals. Tom searches for the chamber's entrance. He studies the foundations, follows concealed passages, and notices where masonry changes from the rough, grey work of later builders to older blocks, worn smooth by centuries of silence. You move through the lower passages beside him, where the air is colder than in the rooms above. Each footstep travels along the stone and returns diminished, as though the castle itself is listening. The legend gradually becomes more precise. Tom learns that Salazar Slytherin is said to have concealed a chamber within the school, leaving behind a place that only his true heir could open. At first, the chamber remains an idea shaped by rumor. Then Tom finds patterns in the castle structure, and the old story begins to acquire a location, a threshold, and a method of entry. Green torchlight rests upon carved underground pillars. Serpents and interlaced roots appear softened by damp, while the still air carries the smell of earth that has never known sunlight. Tom discovers the connection between the chamber and the language of serpents. He understands that Slytherin's heir must possess more than ancestry, because the entrance itself recognizes Parseltongue. You are beneath the girls' bathroom, where broken plumbing has left the floor dark around the sinks. Water slips through narrow cracks, and the pale tiles hold the chill of the foundations. There, Tom finds the concealed entrance. It is not marked by a grand door or a visible stair, but by an arrangement of pipes and stone that seems ordinary until the correct words are spoken. Tom uses Parseltongue to open the entrance beneath the girls' bathroom. The serpent language leaves his mouth in a low, hissing stream, and something deep within the wall answers, with the movement of ancient machinery. The hidden opening shifts aside. Stone withdraws from stone, revealing a dark passage descending beneath the school, and the legend becomes a physical danger. Beyond the bathroom, dampness gathers on every surface. The tiled walls give way to rougher stone, and water dripping through the abandoned room becomes a distant rhythm, almost lost beneath the echo of the entrance. Tom descends alone into the chamber. He carries a wand, but it is not the source of his confidence, for he believes the place belongs to him through blood, language, and deliberate discovery. You follow only in imagination through the immense underground passage, where the air seems to have remained motionless since the castle was young. Dust lies undisturbed along the edges of the floor. The corridor opens into a vast chamber supported by carved pillars. Serpents coil around their surfaces, their mouths stretched in silent warning, while green torchlight touches the damp stone like thin water. Tom sees the statue of Salazar Slytherin at the far end. Its immense face rises from the darkness, and its stone expression appears severe beneath the weak green flames. The creature inside the chamber is a basilisk. Tom has understood the implication of the legend, yet the serpent's enormous body gives the old words a more terrible weight. A basilisk scales move with a slow, heavy whisper against the floor. The sound travels between the pillars and seems to pass beneath your feet, through the stone, and into the bones of the castle. Tom commands the basilisk in Parseltongue. The serpent lifts its head, obeying the language that has carried through the chamber for generations, and the relationship between heir and creature becomes clear. The basilisk can kill through direct eye contact. Its gaze is not merely dangerous but final, and Tom understands that the creature offers him a weapon capable of moving unseen through the school. You stand at the boundary between torchlight and shadow. The underground air is still, The smell of damp earth clings to the walls, and the basilisk's breath moves faintly across the darkness. Tom does not leave the chamber as a frightened boy who has uncovered an ancient secret. He leaves with a plan directed towards those he considers unworthy of Hogwarts. During his 5th year, in 1942-1943, Tom directs the basilisk against Muggle-born students. The attacks occur within the school, where every classroom, staircase, and sleeping chamber can suddenly feel exposed. The dates settle over Hogwarts like a cold season. Lessons and meals continue, yet beneath their daily routines, something vast moves through the passages. You see pupils gathered beneath the high ceilings, speaking in lowered voices while rain darkens the windows. Firelight trembles against old banners, and unease travels from table to table without needing a name. Tom chooses his victims carefully. He does not announce his purpose, allowing the attacks to appear as isolated terrors, while teachers search for explanations and fear grows among the students. In the corridors, the echo of a serpent's hiss seems to belong to the plumbing, the drafts, or the restless imagination of children. Yet Tom knows that the sound has passed through stone with intent. One victim is Myrtle Warren. She's killed in a bathroom, leaving a permanent human trace within the castle because Myrtle becomes the ghost known as Moaning Myrtle. You are near the bathroom when the water has stopped running. The cool tiled walls reflect a dim, colorless light, and the silence contains the impression of someone who has only just departed. Myrtle's death changes the character of the attacks. The danger is no longer a rumor whispered beneath blankets, but a death that has occurred inside a familiar room. Her ghost remains among the mirrors, pipes, stalls, and flooded floors. The bathroom becomes a place where grief repeats itself through complaints, sobs, and the restless movement of water. Hogwarts becomes afraid. Ordinary sounds acquire suspicious meanings as students wonder who might be next and which corridor might conceal the basilisk. At breakfast, conversations falter when a door closes somewhere beyond the hall. In the library, chairs scrape more softly, and even the portraits seem to pause before offering their usual remarks. You pass beneath windows clouded by winter moisture. Beyond the glass, bare branches bend in the wind, while inside, the castle holds the smell of soot, parchment, wet wool, and apprehension. The teachers search for the attacker, but the identity of the heir remains unknown. No one can easily explain how the creature enters the school, where it hides, or why particular pupils are targeted. The school considers closing because the attacker cannot be identified. Headmaster Armando Dippet faces the possibility that Hogwarts may have to send its pupils away for their own safety. In 1942-1943, the prospect of closure reaches every house. The dates are remembered through hurried footsteps and the sight of trunks being considered, opened, and left untouched. The corridors appear longer beneath the dim afternoon light. Cool tiles gather condensation, and water dripping through the abandoned bathroom seems to mark time for the frightened school. Tom understands what closure would mean for him. He does not want to return to the orphanage, where narrow beds, institutional meals, and an unchosen future await him once more. Returning to the orphanage would also threaten the identity he has built at Hogwarts. The school has given him distinction, access, and a setting in which his name can become powerful. You can feel the difference between the warm upper rooms and the damp undercroft. Above, students gather around fires, while below, green torchlight touches the pillars and leaves their carved serpents half concealed. Tom therefore creates a plan to preserve the school and protect his reputation. He will allow the danger to end, provide the authorities with an explanation, and place suspicion upon someone whose reputation makes the accusation plausible. His choice falls upon Rubeus Hagrid. Hagrid is young, unusually large, and known to keep creatures that other pupils would avoid. making him an easy figure for adults to associate with hidden danger. Tom knows that Hagrid's large spider, Aragog, can be blamed for the attacks. The creature's size, strange origin, and association with the Forbidden Forest make the accusation appear convincing. Deep beneath Hogwarts, the basilisk waits in darkness, while another creature becomes the center of suspicion. The truth remains divided between two names, one protected by the school and one sacrificed to it. You are beneath the castle again, where damp earth gives the air a mineral smell. The serpent's hiss seems to remain in the corridors, even when the chamber itself is perfectly still. Tom approaches the matter with evidence carefully arranged. He presents Hagrid as someone who has kept a dangerous creature and suggests that Aragog has caused the attacks. The accusation reaches Headmaster Armando Dippet. Dippet accepts Tom's account and prepares to close Hogwarts, believing the danger may have come from a creature hidden within its grounds. In the office above, papers are placed upon a desk, decisions are weighed, and the possibility of closure becomes official. The old castle waits beyond the windows, its towers dark beneath the weather. Hagrid's name carries the weight Tom requires. His size makes him seem threatening to those who do not know him, while his fondness for creatures allows suspicion to settle upon him naturally. Aragog is blamed for the attacks. The great spider, known only through Hagrid's private loyalties and the cold shelter of the forest, becomes the creature used to complete Tom's story. Rain moves across the high windows in wavering lines. The sound reaches the room as faint tapping, joining the distant movement of staircases and the low murmurs of anxious portraits. Tom's plan depends upon appearing useful. He has reported the danger, identified a possible cause, and placed himself near the solution, while the true basilisk remains beneath the girls' bathroom. You are standing near the entrance after the chamber has closed. The tiles are wet beneath your shoes, and the last trace of green light has disappeared into the hidden passage. Dippet prepares to shut the school. Tom sees the threatened future clearly, with Hogwarts empty, his studies ended, and the orphanage waiting beyond the castle's boundaries. The plan must accomplish two purposes at once. It must preserve Hogwarts as a place of learning and protect Tom from being connected with the deaths. The chamber remains sealed, but its secret has not been surrendered. It lies under the school like a second foundation, holding the memory of the basilisk, the attacks, and Tom's deliberate silence. Cool air rests against the stone corridors. Somewhere above, a door opens and closes, while beneath it water continues to drip through the abandoned bathroom. Dumbledore distrusts Tom's account. His suspicion is quiet rather than dramatic, expressed through careful questions, long observations, and an attention that Tom cannot easily charm away. Tom notices Dumbledore watching him. The knowledge does not make him confess, but it alters his movements, making every conversation part of a contest neither openly names. You are in a corridor where portraits sleep behind darkened eyes. The lamps burn low, and the air smells of old wood, candle smoke, and rain carried in from the courtyard. Dumbledore continues to observe Tom. He watches the boy's expression when Hagrid is accused, listens to the explanation, and keeps his doubts beneath a composed manner. Tom's reputation survives the crisis. He is regarded as a responsible pupil who has helped protect Hogwarts, while Rubeus Hagrid bears the consequences of an accusation shaped for Tom's purposes. The school remains open. Lessons resume, robes return to their familiar colors, and meals are served beneath the enchanted ceiling, although fear has not entirely left the castle. Morning enters through tall windows in pale bands. Dust moves slowly in the light, and the wooden tables carry the smooth wear of generations of hands. Myrtle Warren remains in the bathroom. Her presence ensures that the attacks cannot become merely an old story, because her voice and figure continue to occupy the place where her life ended. You hear water stirring in the pipes, followed by a distant complaint that fades among the tiles. The bathroom is cold, reflective, and strangely intimate beneath the castle's weight. Tom returns to ordinary school life. He attends lessons, speaks with teachers, and carries himself with the restraint expected of a gifted pupil connected with a troubling event. Yet the chamber has changed him. Finding it has confirmed that his ancestry can be made practical, while the basilisk has shown him how ancient power may be directed through a single will. The underground pillars stand beneath the school, their carvings softened by moisture. Green torchlight trembles along the stone, although no hand appears to tend the flames. 5 years of investigation have brought Tom to the chamber. Now the entrance beneath the girls' bathroom belongs to a secret only he fully understands. The name Salazar Slytherin becomes an instrument in Tom's mind. It is no longer only a connection to the past, but a claim upon the future and a justification for command. You are beneath the castle as the school continues overhead. Still, air carries the smell of damp earth, while faint vibrations pass through the ceiling from footsteps above. The basilisk waits in the chamber. Its power remains unchanged, and its ability to kill through direct eye contact gives the hidden place a danger that does not depend upon witnesses. Tom has directed the basilisk against Muggle-born students, but the pattern of his violence is concealed beneath confusion. Hogwarts remembers fear without understanding its source. The years 1942 and 1943 remain attached to the first opening of the chamber in Tom's memory. They mark the period when legend became action and action became carefully managed history. The castle settles around those years like dust upon old shelves. Rain darkens the courtyards, wind moves through the battlements, and the foundations remain cool beneath occupied rooms. Dippett's decision keeps Hogwarts open. Tom has preserved the school in the immediate sense, yet that preservation depends upon falsehood, allowing the true secret to settle more deeply beneath it. You stand at the boundary where the bathroom floor meets the hidden passage. The tiles are pale above you, the ancient stone descends below, and water threads quietly through both worlds. Hagrid's large spider, Aragog, carries the blame that should have reached Tom. Rubeus Hagrid is left with the consequences, while Tom's name becomes associated with courage and practical judgment. Dumbledore does not accept the story completely. He continues to observe Tom, recognizing in the boy an intelligence colder and more purposeful than ordinary ambition. The green light below the castle falls across the pillars in narrow bands. Moisture shines upon the carved serpents, and every curve of stone seems to point towards the sealed heart of the chamber. Tom leaves Hogwarts at the end of the year with his reputation protected. He has discovered the entrance, awakened the basilisk, caused the attacks, and arranged for another person to carry the blame. You remain within the old school as pupils' footsteps pass over the floor above. Their voices are softened by distance, and the hidden chambers receive them only as indistinct murmurs. The Chamber of Secrets is closed once more. Its passages are empty, and the serpent language that opened them rests unspoken in the heir's memory. Myrtle Warren's ghost moves through the bathroom, preserving the human cost of Tom's experiment. Her sorrow belongs to Hogwarts now, as permanent as the pipes, mirrors, and damp tiles. Cold stone presses the silence into shape. A drop falls from the ceiling, strikes a shallow pool, and sends a small circle across the black water. The school has not returned to innocence. It has returned to routine, which is different, and the distinction lies beneath every corridor where students walk without knowing what waits below. Tom's investigation has ended in success. He found what he sought within Hogwarts, learned that the chamber could be opened by Slytherin's heir, and proved himself to be that heir. The basilisk remains below, the victim remains above, and the accusation remains within the school's official memory. Each part of the truth has been placed in a different room. You are moving through the lower passages where the air is quiet and cool. No torch burns nearby, yet a faint green reflection seems to remain upon the carved pillars. In 1942-1943, fear entered Hogwarts through the attacks on Muggle-born students. During the same period, Tom preserved his position while the school continued around the concealed violence. The name Armando Dippet belongs to the decision to prepare for closure. The name Rubeus Hagrid belongs to the accusation. The name Aragog belongs to the creature used to make it credible. The underground air carries damp earth and the faint odor of old water. Above, the castle breathes through chimneys, doors, staircases, and sleeping rooms, while below, the chamber waits. Dumbledore's distrust is the one part of Tom's plan that remains unfinished. It does not expose him, yet it follows him, a quiet attention moving through the corridors after the danger appears to have passed. Tom understands that his reputation has survived, but he also understands that Dumbledore is not persuaded. The knowledge deepens his caution and strengthens his desire to control the story. You hear the distant hiss of a pipe opening within the wall. For a moment, the sound resembles a serpent speaking in stone. Then the castle returns it to ordinary water. The real secret settles more deeply beneath Hogwarts. The chamber remains undiscovered by most of the school, and Tom carries its knowledge away as private property. Nothing in the upper rooms announces what has happened. Candles burn, books are opened, plates are cleared, and pupils cross corridors beneath portraits that know nothing of the chamber. The passage beneath the girls' bathroom remains hidden behind its ordinary appearance. Its entrance can be opened only through Parseltongue, and its silence protects Tom more reliably than locks. You are surrounded by cool tiles marked with faint mineral stains. The abandoned bathroom seems empty, yet water dripping through it continues with the patient regularity of a clock. Myrtle's voice may rise from the far end of the room, carrying through mirrors and pipes. Her death has left the castle with a witness who cannot be sent away. Tom's achievement is therefore incomplete in a way that troubles him. He has protected his reputation from the teachers, but he cannot remove every human trace of what he has done. The basilisk lies beneath the school, unseen and obedient. Its enormous body is folded among the shadows, and the stone beneath it has been worn by scales moving through darkness. Green torchlight touches the pillars without warmth. The carved serpents appear to watch the empty chamber, their stone eyes fixed upon the place where Tom once stood. Tom has learned that ancient inheritance can be converted into immediate power. He has also learned that power must be accompanied by a story acceptable to those who govern the world above. You stand beneath Hogwarts while the school remains open overhead. The weight of the castle rests upon the chamber, the bathroom, the tunnels, and the secret held between them. Dippet's acceptance of Tom's accusation allows ordinary life to continue. Closure is avoided, Hagrid becomes the suspected keeper of danger, and Tom leaves the crisis appearing helpful. Dumbledore continues to watch. His silence does not reassure Tom, and the chamber's existence gives the boy reason to regard every question as a possible threat. Rain has passed over the castle, leaving the windows dark and shining. In the lower halls, dampness gathers upon the walls, and the smell of wet earth remains undisturbed. The first opening of the chamber has ended, yet it has established a pattern. A hidden place, a chosen victim, a creature under command, and a scapegoat can be joined again. Tom does not yet know how far that pattern will reach. He knows only that Hogwarts has accepted the explanation, while the true heir has remained concealed among its students. The school's foundations hold the memory in layers. Beneath the bathroom lie the passage and the chamber. Beneath the chamber lies older earth, and above them all, daily life continues. You are alone beside the darkened entrance. The stone feels cold through the air, water marks the tiles, and somewhere far below, the basilisk remains awake within the silence. 5 years of searching have given Tom the Chamber of Secrets. The years 1942 and 1943 have given him a reputation to protect, a death to conceal, and a secret strong enough to outlast his time at Hogwarts. The name Salazar Slytherin echoes through the chamber's carved halls. It reaches the statue, the pillars, the serpent language, and Tom's chosen identity, binding past and ambition together beneath the school. You leave the lower passage as the first faint light enters the windows above. The castle is still, the bathroom is empty, and the concealed entrance rests beneath ordinary stone. Hogwarts remains open, but it is no longer untouched. The chamber has become part of its hidden structure, and Tom Riddle has placed within it a danger that will sleep until another heir calls it forth. You leave the lower passage as the first faint light enters the windows above. The castle is still, the bathroom is empty, and the concealed entrance rests beneath ordinary stone. Hogwarts remains open, but it is no longer untouched. In the days that follow, the school gathers around the story it can understand. A student has discovered the monster, confronted the danger, and prevented further deaths. The truth beneath that story is quieter, and it belongs to Tom alone, concealed beneath the language of duty and courage. Teachers speak of his composure, his initiative, and his unusual willingness to investigate what frightened other pupils. The governors hear a version that leaves no room for suspicion, while the students repeat his name with admiration. Tom accepts every word with lowered eyes and a modest inclination of the head. He has learned that a hidden crime can be transformed into public honor when the right person controls the telling. A special services trophy is presented to him by Hogwarts, its silver lettering shining beneath the high windows of the Great Hall. Around the cup, candlelight trembles upon polished tables and pale stone, while summer air rests warmly against the open arches. The trophy has a clean metallic scent, faintly touched by the cloth used to polish it before the ceremony. Beyond the walls, leaves shift in the grounds beneath a soft evening breeze, and the lake holds the last light of day in long, broken bands. Your hands remain still at your sides as Tom receives the award, although the cool surface of the cup seems almost to carry the secret of the chamber. Somewhere above, a clock marks the passing hour with a subdued movement of gears. The silver lettering remains bright long after the hall has emptied. The trophy strengthens Tom's reputation as a model student. He understands that public virtue is most useful when it appears effortless, and he allows the teachers to believe that his conduct arises naturally from discipline and concern. His robes remain neat, his essays are carefully written, and his answers in class arrive with the precise confidence that makes adults feel secure. Students who once watched him from a distance begin to seek his company, trusting the judgment of the boy who has saved the school. Tom never tells them what he has done beneath the bathroom, nor does he allow any tremor of guilt to disturb his expression. Instead, he places the incident among the achievements that form his growing authority. The chamber has given him more than a weapon. It has given him a story, and the story has made him admired. In the trophy room, dust rests softly along the edges of old shields and faded banners. The silver cup stands among objects won for diligence, bravery, and service, each name engraved in small, orderly letters. A narrow window admits the blue-gray light of evening, and the glass reflects the trophy as though another cup were suspended in the darkness. The air smells of wax, old wood, and stone cooled by the departing day. You move slowly between the cases, hearing only the restrained creak of floorboards beneath your feet. From distant corridors comes the muffled closing of doors, followed by the gentle settling of the castle. The Special Services trophy gathers a thin line of moonlight across its rim. Its polished surface offers no indication of the hidden passage, the serpent language, or the boy who has learned to make danger appear virtuous. Tom's private work continues after the public celebration has faded. During his school years, he creates a magical diary, choosing an object that can appear ordinary while retaining a capacity for influence. The diary is not merely a record of thoughts, and its pages are not intended to preserve the harmless memories of a diligent pupil. Within it, Tom places a memory, or a fragment, of himself as he is at 16. The diary therefore carries a version of Tom Riddle that can speak beyond the limits of his living body. It contains the younger boy's voice, his knowledge of the chamber, and his understanding of the fear that surrounds it. He intends the diary to reopen the chamber in the future, when another hand finds the correct pages and another mind becomes willing to listen. The diary lies closed in the quiet beneath a wand's light, its cover dark against the desk. The soft turn of its pages sounds almost like dry leaves moving in a sheltered garden. Ink catches the blue illumination, forming narrow lines that seem to deepen whenever the room grows still. The leather carries a faint smell of dust and oil, while the desk beneath it has been polished until the grain feels smooth beneath your fingertips. Outside, summer dusk settles over the Hogwarts grounds, and the last birds move between the trees. A window stands open towards the lake, admitting the distant hush of water against the shore. The diary remains patient beneath the wand, holding a memory that has not yet begun to speak. Its silence is deliberate, and its future purpose is already hidden within the pages. Tom knows that an object can travel where a person cannot. A diary can be carried from one room to another, placed in a trunk, forgotten on a shelf, or entrusted to someone who believes it harmless. Its intimacy makes it valuable, because a reader approaching the pages expects confession rather than command. Tom's fragment will wait inside that expectation. It will present itself as a lonely voice, a preserved boy seeking recognition, and then gradually reveal the knowledge that can open the chamber once more. The future is part of the design. The diary is made for a time when Tom's name may have disappeared from the school, when the original crime has become a rumor, and when the old fear can be summoned again through a new generation. The room where the diary rests is warmed by the final heat of the day. A thin line of gold lies across the floorboards, fading beneath the legs of the desk as the sun lowers beyond the western hills. The curtains hang without movement, their heavy fabric holding the scent of dust and lavender. On the shelf, bottles of ink stand beside folded parchment, and a small brass lamp gives the wand's blue light a warmer edge. Summer dusk over the Hogwarts grounds deepens into violet, and the towers become dark shapes against the sky. The castle's stones release the coolness they gathered during the night before. Your breathing falls into the quiet rhythm of the room, while the diary's pages remain closed and smooth. Nothing moves except a faint thread of smoke from a nearby candle. The diary will later become one of Voldemort's Horcruxes, though the name has not yet been spoken. For now, Tom is still learning how such a thing might be accomplished, and his curiosity begins with a conversation conducted in privacy. He chooses Horace Slughorn, a teacher who recognizes talent, cultivates promising students, and takes pleasure in being approached by unusual minds. Tom enters the conversation with courtesy, attentive posture, and the respectful warmth that has served him so well. He does not ask openly about his own plans. Instead, he frames the subject as an intellectual question, the sort that might arise from advanced study and a desire to understand the farthest limits of magic. Slughorn's office is close and comfortable, filled with pine smoke and polished furniture. The fire breathes softly behind an iron screen, sending a reddish glow across books, silver instruments, and dark wooden cabinets. A decanter catches the light beside two untouched glasses, while the air carries traces of tobacco, old paper, and the faint sweetness of preserved fruit. The polished arms of a chair reflect the fire in narrow amber lines. Beyond the curtained window, summer dusk settles across the lawns, and distant owls begin their low calls. You sit near the warmth, hearing the small shifts of logs as they collapse into ash. The room seems designed for confidential speech, with its thick rugs and heavy curtains absorbing every sound. Tom asks Slughorn about Horcruxes in a private conversation. He gives the question an innocent shape, speaking of an obscure form of magical preservation and wondering whether the soul can be divided. Slughorn's expression changes before his voice does. He tells Tom that a Horcrux involves hiding a fragment of the soul inside an object. The explanation is enough to give Tom a vocabulary for immortality, yet Slughorn refuses to give him a complete explanation of the process. He interrupts the question, withdraws from the subject, and treats the matter as too dangerous for a student to pursue. Tom listens without protest. He thanks the professor with perfect politeness, allowing disappointment to remain hidden behind a calm face. Pine smoke drifts beneath the ceiling and settles into the curtains of Slughorn's office. The firelight turns the spines of the books from brown to copper, while the polished furniture gives back small, wavering reflections. A clock on the mantel advances with a patient click, and each movement seems louder whenever the conversation falls silent. The glass in the window has cooled beneath the evening air, though the room itself remains warm. From outside comes the subdued rustle of grass, followed by a distant call from the grounds. The scent of paper rises whenever a page is moved, mingling with resin, dust, and old wood. Your eyes rest upon the fire as the word Horcrux seems to settle into the room. Slughorn's refusal leaves the silence heavier than before. The incomplete answer does not discourage Tom. It gives him direction. He has become increasingly concerned with defeating death, and the thought of dividing the soul offers a new path beyond the ordinary protections of the body. He begins to explore the limits of magic beyond what ordinary students are willing to study. In books kept away from the common shelves, he searches for references to the soul, the permanence of consciousness, and the forces that separate life from death. His work is patient rather than frantic. Tom does not hurry when waiting may produce better knowledge. Each restriction placed upon him confirms that he is approaching something powerful, and each refusal becomes evidence that the world has hidden its most important truths from him. In the library, the lamps burn low above long tables of dark walnut. Dust moves through their golden circles whenever a door opens, then sinks slowly across the pages of neglected books. The air is cool beneath the high ceiling, carrying the dry smell of vellum and the faint mineral scent of stone. Shelves rise into shadow, the ladders resting against rails worn smooth by generations of hands. A quill scratches somewhere beyond the visible rows, and the sound travels gently through the stillness. Outside, rain passes over the roof in a soft, even pattern, though the library windows show only darkness. You turn a page beneath a narrow one's light, feeling the rough edge of the paper against your thumb. The shadows between the shelves remain undisturbed. Tom continues to use charm and courtesy as a means of influence. He remembers names, offers small compliments, and listens with an attention that makes each person feel briefly important. His followers at Hogwarts help preserve his social authority, repeating his judgments and defending his reputation whenever a teacher or student expresses doubt. They admire the mystery surrounding him, mistaking restraint for wisdom and ambition for purpose. Some are drawn by his confidence, while others hope that closeness to him will bring protection or distinction. Tom does not need to command them openly. His manner creates the impression that loyalty is freely given, even when his silent expectations guide their behavior. The school becomes a place where his authority is maintained by other voices. A faint draft travels through the corridor outside the common rooms. It lifts the edge of a parchment notice and sends a few loose threads of dust across the floor. Wall hangings stir against ancient stone, producing a soft brush of fabric that fades almost at once. Candle flames lean towards the passage and recover, leaving moving bands of gold along the portrait's frames. The portraits speak in low murmurs, their painted faces half hidden beneath the evening shadows. Somewhere below, water moves through the pipes with a muted, hollow sound. You stand beneath the warm pools of candlelight, while the castle's layered smells of wax, dust, rain, and old timber mingle around you. The corridor seems to preserve every quiet conversation without revealing any of them. The ordinary name Tom Riddle gradually becomes something he intends to discard. It carries the sound of the orphanage, the Muggle father he has never forgiven, and the history of a child who was unwanted, nameless in all the ways that mattered to him. Tom has learned that identity can be treated as material, reshaped by arrangement, and declared into existence. He takes the letters of Tom Marvolo Riddle and rearranges them into I am Lord Voldemort. The result is not a nickname offered by others, but an identity constructed by his own will. The new name separates him from his Muggle father and his orphanage identity, placing distance between the boy he was and the figure he intends to become. In an unused classroom, dust lies upon the desks like pale ash. A single lamp burns beside a sheet of parchment, and its light reveals the black strokes of the old name. The letters of Tom Marvolo Riddle stand in a careful line, each one familiar and increasingly intolerable. Beside them, the new arrangement waits in a darker hand, its words shaped as a declaration rather than a family record. The room smells of chalk, cold stone, and rain caught in the window frame. Beyond the glass, summer dusk over the Hogwarts grounds has almost disappeared, leaving the lawns beneath a deep blue sky. The parchment edges curl slightly in the warm air. Your wand casts a narrow light across the ink, and the chosen name appears to possess its own shadow. Tom repeats the new name privately until it no longer sounds like an experiment. Lord Voldemort carries no orphanage register, no Muggle surname, and no reminder of the father whose absence has shaped his resentment. It suggests mastery over death, while also concealing the simple boy who once stood among other children and waited for a life to begin. The transformation is linguistic, but it is also moral. By refusing the name Tom Riddle, he refuses the history attached to it. The past is not examined or healed. It is pushed aside, buried beneath invention, and replaced with a title that demands obedience. Yet the old name remains within the diary, within the school records, and within the memory of those who have watched him grow. The parchment has cooled by the time the ink becomes fully dry. A breeze enters through the narrow window, carrying the scent of wet grass and distant pine. The flame beside the desk bends low, and its reflection trembles across a metal inkwell. Rainwater gathers along the outer sill, dropping at measured intervals into the courtyard below. In the walls, the castle settles with deep wooden knocks and quiet shifts of masonry. You hear footsteps pass far away, then fade behind a closing door. The new name lies beneath the old one, though the letters cannot be separated once they have been rearranged. For a moment, both identities share the same piece of parchment. Afterward, only one is meant to remain. The early choices at Hogwarts establish the pattern that will define Lord Voldemort. Secrecy gives him room to act, control gives him influence over others, violence removes obstacles, and self-invention allows him to deny the life from which he came. The chamber, the diary, and the hidden conversation with Slughorn belong to the same developing design. Each decision extends beyond its immediate purpose. A monster in a school becomes a legend, a diary becomes a vessel for memory and future influence, and a question becomes the beginning of a search for immortality. Tom's talents are real, but they are placed in the service of a will that increasingly recognizes no boundary beyond its own desire. Night rests over the grounds with a cool, damp stillness. The lawns shine faintly beneath the moon, and the lake has become a dark surface touched by narrow silver lines. Pine trees stand along the path, their branches moving with a low, sustained murmur. Ivy presses against the castle walls, its leaves wet from the evening rain. From an open window comes the subdued glow of a room where someone has left a lamp burning. The stone beneath your hand is cold and slightly rough, its surface marked by centuries of weather. Far across the grounds, an owl crosses the sky without sound. The windows of Hogwarts hold scattered reflections, each one wavering as the night air passes. Tom leaves Hogwarts in 1945 after completing his education. The date rests quietly within the school's history, yet the departure carries more weight than a graduation. He leaves with a carefully constructed identity, a reputation shaped by charm and service, and an unfinished ambition directed towards the defeat of death. The Special Services Trophy remains behind as a public account of his supposed virtue. The diary carries a more private account, preserving the 16-year-old Tom Riddle and waiting for the future he has designed. The knowledge from Slughorn remains incomplete, but the word Horcrux has entered his mind and will not leave it. Beyond the gates, the name Lord Voldemort is ready to replace the boy who entered the castle years before. The corridor is empty as the last night before departure gives way to morning. Cold air moves beneath the doors, touching the stone and carrying the faint scent of rain from the grounds. Torches burn in shallow brackets, their flames reduced to quiet blue and amber points. Along the walls, shadows gather beneath arches and vanish when the light shifts. Your footsteps fall softly over the worn floor, and the sound travels ahead through the passage. At the far end, a tall window shows the first grey line of dawn. The castle's furniture stands covered in darkness, its polished surfaces barely visible beneath the fading candlelight. The final echo of footsteps leaving an empty corridor withdraws into the stairwell. Outside, the grounds are pale beneath the early sky. Mist lies across the lawns, separating the trees into soft layers and hiding the lower slopes beyond the lake. The air smells of wet earth, pine needles, and cold water. A rook moves along the roofline, its claws making a delicate sound against the lead. Behind you, the windows of Hogwarts reflect the colorless morning, while the towers rise above the fog like old sentinels. The path beneath your shoes is dark with moisture, and small stones press through the thin mud. Somewhere near the greenhouses, a door closes with a muted wooden thud. The school remains still, holding its trophies, its records, its secrets, and the hidden entrance beneath ordinary stone. Tom Marvolo Riddle has not vanished simply because he has chosen another name. The boy remains within the diary, within the memory of the castle, and within the pattern of choices that shaped him. Lord Voldemort is the name he carries beyond the gates, but its letters are built from the same life he wishes to deny. The Muggle father, the orphanage, the chamber, the trophy, and the private question to Slughorn all belong to one continuous history. His future will make the old schoolboy appear distant, almost unreal, yet the foundation was established here, in the corridors and classrooms of Hogwarts. The identity is new, but the ambition has been growing for years. Morning light spreads across the lake in quiet bands of silver. The mist thins around the trees, revealing the grass in patches and then in wider fields. Wet leaves shine along the path, and droplets fall from the branches whenever a breeze moves through them. The castle stones warm slowly beneath the rising sun, releasing the sense of rain and moss. A distant bell sounds once, its note traveling over the grounds and fading near the water. Your coat brushes against the damp hedges as you pass, leaving small beads of moisture along the fabric. Behind you, the entrance to Hogwarts stands open, though the corridors within remain dim. Ahead, the road descends beyond the school, carrying your departing footsteps into the wider world. The schoolboy leaves Hogwarts carrying a carefully constructed identity and an unfinished ambition. He has learned to turn hidden violence into public honor, to use courtesy as a form of control, and to preserve memory within an object designed for future influence. He has learned that the soul can be discussed, divided, and concealed, even when the most important part of the method remains beyond his grasp. He has learned that a name may be rearranged until it appears to belong to someone new. In 1945, Tom Riddle leaves the school, but the pattern of secrecy, control, violence, and self-invention leaves with him. The new name is spoken in secret, and the old one grows quiet beneath it. The road beyond the gates is bordered by tall grass silvered with dew. Morning birds call from the hedges, their notes separated by long intervals of silence. The scent of pine remains in the cool air, mingling with distant smoke from cottages beyond the hill. Behind you, Hogwarts recedes into the mist, its towers softened until they seem to belong to a dream. The path is firm beneath your feet, though rain has darkened the earth at its edges. A breeze crosses the open fields and lifts the hem of your coat. Nothing hurries across the landscape. The day begins gently, while the castle keeps its secrets beneath stone, polished wood, old pages, and the fading echo of footsteps.